Whoa.
Two oldest spirit guides are turtle and ant. And this is the noise they make underground. This is how they talk to each other.
Hi, Courtney. Courtney Culpepper says hello.
Hey, Cordy.
Hi.
And corroboree is a ceremony that brings you into dream time. And dream time is the time that has, here, get a picture inside.
Hey, Osric.
And when you are in balance, it only took one match to start that fire.
Carlos Gonzalez said his grandfather is in the hospital on life support. Can you talk about life after life?
Yeah, we can.
Thanks.
So, I went to Australia just to visit a friend. I had no idea I was going to spend 3 years there. I was only going to spend a few months. But when we landed, Australia isn't really, they constantly talk about how their ancestors were criminals. Well, they weren't like petty criminals. They were like a good example is Queen Victoria's cousin, who was the surgeon of the court. He was Jack the Ripper. And as long as he was ripping the throats out of whores, not a problem. But when he started going after the middle class, well, they had to get him out of town. Because to take someone from London and put them on the other side of the planet in Australia.
Could you be, they want you to speak louder or something. People are commenting that it's not as loud.
How about this?
I could get close.
Yeah, get close. Can you hear me now? Anyway, so Australia didn't have just common criminals. They had psychopathic rich guys. And their whole lineage, you know, the guys like Reginald Ansett, Mr. Fox TV, what's that guy's name? Every element of Australian business was run by one of these psychopathic families. And they all went back pretty much to the lineage of the Queen of England. Yeah. And so Australia was pretty much, you'd think America with slavery and killing all the Indians was bad. Australia was like a zillion times worse because Australia was like, before the white guy got there, there was like 16 feet of black topsoil everywhere. Australia could have fed the world. But the English brought sheep and cows that ate the grass to the ground, to the roots, and then they had these gigantic floods, meaning you think it's a desert, but they have these monsoons that just march across the whole country. And one day, the whole country is going underwater. It's like one big Florida. And I mean, there are no real mountains. I mean, up in Queensland, there's a little bit of mountain range, but not really. The rest is flatlands, but could have fed the friggin' world. But because of the English, their stupidity and selfishness, and we know better, they basically destroyed Australia. And they also killed, there were about 13 million. So this is the kind of magic. Meaning how to really make the fire burn hard, because it was a little moist, is to have air. So we have this little fan that blows through the back of this chamber in the wood stove, and it comes out this, and I'm using it to really start the wood on fire. Because first thing you gotta get is coals. Once we get some coals, we can throw these big logs on, and this thing will burn forever and heat up the whole. This one wood stove will heat up the whole school. Anyway, back to Australia. So I had no idea I was going to be there for 3 years. So I get off the airplane, and my wife and I had taken flight 007, James Bond, Pan Am from LA. And it was like going steerage. It was like a movie with the Titanic with, what's his name? Who's the star?
Leonardo
Leonardo.
DiCaprio.
Yeah, I was like Leonardo, what's his name? And my wife was Kate, what's her name? And we were in steerage, in the back of the airplane. And, you know, it was not a happy trip. Now, I knew Pan Am sucked. So I made sure that I had a total invoice of everything that we brought with us, and that I had a copy of the international law, because here you're on an international flight and the airlines loses your suitcase, they gotta pay for it if you have a receipt showing everything you had. Anyway, I had this, and I knew there, and I didn't really take much, but my wife, Donna Ann, she took everything she was ever gonna need. And a friend of mine made us a special suitcase that had these little windows that had photos that we had in, you know, so our suitcase was one big photo collage. But anyway, so we take the flight, and we're right there where the northern hemisphere meets the southern hemisphere. And, you know, northern hemisphere, the water goes down the toilet clockwise. Southern hemisphere, it goes down the toilet counterclockwise.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Because of the gravitational field. It's on the other side of the world, so the gravity goes the other way.
Oh.
So anyway, so we're flying over there, and I'm in the John, in the back, and I'm like cramped. I mean, this is not the first class.
Why would you call it the John when my name is John?
Because they call toilets in Australia the John.
Oh, well, but you've done that before, like around me, and it's like, okay, it's.
Okay, you want me to call it the
No.
crapper?
No, it's
The fecal containment facility?
No, it's a reference to the
Toilet.
R-rated slapstick humor that I've done before that I was
It's a
very good
toilet.
with.
No,
But I don't like being associated with that. But
Okay, I'll
Al-
call it, they call it...
Albert, Prince Albert, is that what you are?
How about penis? You want to
You're
see my penis?
no,
Okay,
no,
I'll
no,
show
no,
it
no. No, come on, just let's calm down, be nice.
to you. I'm always nice, John. I'm always
Well,
nice.
Okay,
Anyway, back to the
I'm
story.
gonna-
So I was in the WC.
okay. The
Right.
W. Oh, that could be somebody's name. George Bush's middle
No,
name.
no. The WC
Wait,
stands
or his
for water closet. In England, the first toilets
I know.
had these...
Demonize somebody. I don't know. All right,
Anyway,
it's no big deal.
So I'm in the
We're-
WC of Flight 007 Pan Am Airlines.
We're a nice teacher.
And I just pinched a loaf, and I'm looking at it and going, oh, good loaf. And I push the button, and the WC, the blue water starts going clockwise, and then it slows down, and the turd goes the other way. And it's like,
Wow, you crossed over into that
yes, and
area.
I watched it happen in the toilet. And from that moment on, my life changed. Nothing's
Really?
been ever the same. I've been in dream time from that point on. The Aborigines knew I was coming from that point, I mean before then, but that's when the deal was struck. And so so I'm watching this down, and it's like I just dropped a tad
Wow.
of acid. I mean, everything, and it was like the WC was like this big. I mean, it was like you had to like this to sit on the throne and pinch a loaf. And so anyway, I get out, and I'm like a little, flustered. I think that's a good word. And, I go
that was
to
a
my
bird.
wife is kind of asleep, and I kind of
something.
ask the
I saw a funny creature there. If you want to look back at the video, I saw something go like that, like a really fast creature,
okay,
like go like that.
yeah.
back there in that window. If somebody was going to look back at it. I don't know what it was. Okay, sorry to interrupt. I saw something very strange, so I thought, sorry if I...
No. Anyway, so I asked the stewardess, or flight attendant as they call them now, what day it was. And she goes, oh, it's Sunday. And I said, no, the date. And she goes, well, when we left LA, it was September 12th. But because we just went over the line, it is now 9/11. The day we were up in the airplane, it was 9/11, 1977.
1977?
Yep, 1977.
September
11th, 1977. So I go back to my seat, I kind of crawl in, and my wife curls up like a cat in my lap, and we both fall asleep, and the stewardess is nice enough to give us pillows and blankets. She was actually quite nice, because we were in the crappiest seats in the airplane. And I fall asleep, and I have a dream of the World Trade Center collapsing.
You did?
Yeah, 1977. And that's because dream time, see, we think our lives are linear, but dream time is everything at once. And because I experienced the turd turning around, I became part of dream time. And if you've ever seen 2001, A Space Odyssey.
Yeah. Did you want me to get closer?
Sure, you can get close.
They're saying something about the sound, but
if you ever seen 2001, A Space Odyssey, at the end, after the astronaut goes through the artifact, the anomaly, the black thing that changed the monkeys into Homo sapiens sapiens, and it turned him into the new human. That's kind of what I experienced. Anyway, so I wake up right at that time.
But you said you're reborn. The phone call cut it off. You said you were reborn during your dream?
Yeah. Well, no. When I was in the WC of Flight 007.
Okay.
And I watched the turd go from clockwise to counterclockwise.
And how did the dream fit into it?
Well, it was just a portend of things to come. And I had been very intimate with the World Trade Center. I was an apprentice electrician in the IBEW Local 3, and for 7 months, all I did was bend 4-inch and 6-inch galvanized pipe on the Greenlee 712 pneumatic pipe bender. It was like being in a factory. I just kept bending these pipes. And this machine, if you could think backwards and inside out, it could bend a 10-foot piece of pipe. If it needed a 40 and a 90 and a 30, it could do it. And back in those days, a stick of 4-inch galvanized cost $100. So if you bent it the wrong way, you'd be throwing a lot of Benjamins away. So I could do it. So that's all I did. So I was intimate with each floor of the World Trade Center. And the fact that the floors were 4 foot thick of pre-stressed concrete that had rebar that thick in it, about 7 layers, and then had aircraft cable that thick that usually holds up things like the George Washington Bridge strung through it. Pretty much.
Does this thing turn off so we could hear your volume louder? The other day I had to plug it in, and I had to be far away from it because I had to plug it in a wall. That was...
We can turn this.
Yeah.
I don't think it really makes that much noise.
The other day I had to plug it in with a wire up there, and I couldn't unplug it because there was no battery left on it on my good iPhone camera.
I don't know if this thing's going to really burn. But anyway... So
all right, Pamela, to recap on what's going on so far, he went to Australia on a plane.
In 1977.
Something amazing happened with the toilet water. He was looking at it going this way, or was it counterclockwise or
It went, when we were in the northern hemisphere, it went clockwise. right? And then when we went over
Clockwise.
the
It was going like
meridian,
this, and he was
clockwise,
staring at it, and
right?
all of a
I was
sudden it
looking down. I
slowed
was looking
down.
down in the throne.
It slowed down,
The
and it went
turd
the other.
was doing this,
It
and then
went
all
the
of a
other way, and ever since then, you've never been the same. The Aborigines knew that you were on your way.
yeah, pretty much. Well, they knew I was on my way before I even went on my way. And
And is that still burning?
no,
What happened to it?
well, we took the air out of it. So.
Well, it's not that cold in here. You want to save the wood in case
Yeah.
power goes out, or
Yeah. Anyway, so so I'm in the airplane. I see.
you want to sit down in a couch or
Yeah, sit on
something?
the couch, sure.
Okay.
Yeah. And I saw the turd, go the other way, and it kind of changed. I kind of had this sense that everything from here to here was what it was, but anything from here out was different. So anyway, I go back to my seat. I crawl in, and my wife gets in my lap, and we kind of are sleeping. And I had this dream of the World Trade Center collapsing, and I knew that that could never happen because I was intimate in building it. Meaning, there's only one scientific group of all the engineering groups of all the different scientific engineering groups. There's only one group that the 9/11 Commission took as scientific fact, and that was popular mechanics. Everybody else, the IEEE, the American Architectural Society, the guys who built it, all said this could never happen because in the history of steel buildings, none have ever fallen down. There were buildings all around the world that burnt for days and days, and everything friggin' burned up except the steel, and the building didn't fall down. The only three steel buildings that ever collapsed due to fire were World Trade Center 1, 2, and building number 7. So, you can go to the Truth Movement 9/11, and there's a zillion websites and blogs about this, and you can make up your own mind. But I was having a dream in that airplane in 1977, some 30 years before it happens, and I'm crying. And as I'm crying, the tears drop off my cheek and hit my wife. And I see the tear go down real slow, slow down. And it just hits her cheek, and it just kind of covers her cheek. And then the other tear, and so about 5 or 6 of my tears fall like this, and I'm just watching it. And she wakes up, and her face is all wet, but my whole face is like, just covered, and my eyes are like, glassy pools. And she goes, honey, what's wrong? And just as she says that, the bing bong, we're about to land in Sydney, and we kind of, oh, Sydney. And she's looking out the window and says, oh, look at Australia. Oh, look at that. And we land, and on the top rail of the place is my friend Neil, who we're going to visit and be with. And he is jumping up like a dog, that his best friend has just arrived. And so we land, he's at the gate. We hug, we kiss. And he's been telling me, so he lived with me in New York, and then we traveled across America together and went to San Francisco. And Neil was a guy, he just had this magnetism that every woman wanted to sleep with him. And when we were going across America in the Gray Rabbit, Lester's bus, basically he said that he would never sleep with any of my women. Because all his friends, he slept with all their women, but he said, you're my best friend, I'll never sleep, and so he never did. So when he met Donna in San Francisco, because she was waiting for us, he didn't, he was attracted to Donna, but he didn't hit on her. But Donna's best friend, Les, was Donna's doubleganger. And she was English, and her father was a rocket scientist and came to Florida, and she was born in Florida. So even though she was English, she was a Florida girl. And then she went to San Francisco, and that's where she met Donna. And they were born on the same day, almost to the same minute. They were both cancer girls, both triple cancers. And it was pretty amazing. So we, in San Francisco, when we get off the bus, and Donna's waiting, and she's kind of depressed because things aren't what they were when she left 4 years earlier. So, well, she basically was mopey, and I was trying to keep her, happy. And Neil was hitting on Les, and no, Yvonne, that was her name, Yvonne, and because she looked just like Donna. And Yvonne had a boyfriend named Tony, who was a albino Filipino flamenco dancer and guitarist. And he was going to, so we land, and we go to their house, and Tony's rushing around, and he's kind of effeminate, and he's kind of very thin and small. And
What's that sound?
And
Wait, what's that sound? Is that a cat? Oh yeah, it's a cat. It's Sunshine. Hey.
Let me drop.
All right.
So anyway,
He's good.
He
good.
wants all the attention.
Where?
He's the star. And
Courtney Culpepper.
and so basically, Tony is not even aware that Neil is hitting on Yvonne, and Yvonne is actually sparking to Neil, because every woman does. It's amazing. Anyway, so we go to the show that Tony's going to perform in, and the guitar, Neil and I are sitting in the back, with Donna next to me, and Yvonne and Tony are in the front, and Yvonne's driving. And Neil has the guitar, this flamenco guitar that has many strings.
Wow.
And Tony has spent hours tuning it perfectly. And Neil opens it up and turns all the knobs, so it's totally out of tune. So when Tony gets up there in front of everyone, instead of like being this amazing flamenco, bling, 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 and then Tony has to, and it totally bums everybody out. And Tony is not the great flamenco guy because the guitar is out of, it broke.
Wow, it's like I have deja vu about it.
Yeah, good. So we come home, and now my dog, Duca, went to California with Donna, and I stayed in New York, and I worked on a discotheque called Xenons, and they made a deal with me. They would pay me whatever I wanted as long as I made it work, because they had other people do all the hard work, but nothing worked, and no one could figure it out. So but they weren't going to let me leave unless I fixed, unless it worked, and it had to work by a certain time.
Yeah.
And it was, we tried to outdo Studio 54. It was the year that Close Encounters, so they had a big flying saucer that came down, and it had all kinds of stuff. And I had to make it work. And I did. And then we got to take Lester's bus across the country. And Neil had sex with every woman on the bus. And
He
so,
did?
Hmm?
He did?
They were all
Some
like,
guys have that ability.
Yeah, so he had the je ne
I've
sais
known
what.
2 of them in my life.
Right. And
One of them was the most popular. He was voted the most popular in my class at a big high school. He's one of my good friends. And the other one was this guy that had ripped abs. His face looked like a 14-year-old boy, but he was big and strong and like ripped and tall. And he could have this ability, he could just like almost make them have sex with him or something.
Well, Neil,
I had trouble
attractive than you.
when I was young. He was?
Yes, he was a chunky little boy, and he was a cheeky little monkey. That's what his mother used to call him, cheeky little monkey. Anyway, so
Oh, that's strange.
yes, but
I never did that, but
he had the juice, that's for sure. So anyway, we're in San Francisco, and he's hitting on Yvonne, and Yvonne's sparking back, and Tony is like totally depressed. Now, Donna has been in San Francisco with Yvonne for the last 2 months, and she wanted to, you know how you want to, oh, I want to go to LA, I want to go to, she came from San Francisco, she wanted to go back to San Francisco.
Oh.
But she had been with me for 3 years in New York and Europe and all over the place. And when she went back to San Francisco, nothing was the same. Everyone she knew was dead or gone. The only person, it was her
Oh, it
buddy.
was totally different?
Yeah, totally different.
Oh, very strange.
Right. So, and it was a very strange time, too. So anyway, and I gave her a big chunk of change so she could do whatever she wanted. You know, she stayed a good time at the big fancy hotel in San Francisco. She loved that hotel. Anyway, so there we are, and we're coming home, and my dog, Donna's been taking care of my dog, and it's her dog too. You know, she's been with me 3 years, and Duca, well, you know, Duca was like psychotic. When she was with me, she was the best dog. When she wasn't with me, she was like psycho dog. But she loved Donna, so she was pretty good with Donna. But when we came home, Yvonne and Tony had a Doberman Pinscher, which was like a Nazi, and would weigh its own food and only eat 8 grams. Well, there was a big, like 55-gallon thing of food that the dogs could take. And, Donna kept Duca because Duca would just eat the whole thing. And so when we went to see Tony's show, Duca broke into where the food was and ate all 55 gallons of dog food. So she was as big as a 50, but I was exhausted.
But what happened with the Aborigines?
We're getting there. I have to tell
That's what you got to, how long are you, that's what we really,
That's how but I have to tell the story about Neil and Donna and Yvonne and Leslie, because that makes because the connection with Neil in New York.
it's getting darker in here though.
Okay.
We'll just go as long as we can. If it's kind of dark, we can.
Okay,
We'll start a fire or something for light. I'll set a light up.
I'll quicken it up. I just don't need any.
We have the lights on right
Yeah.
there, but they're not like very bright.
Anyway, so we get home, and Duca has eaten all of this, and I'm just tired. So I go to sleep on the floor, right? And Donna coils up next to me, and we're falling asleep. But I hear.
Ah, Christ! What the heck is that?
And that was
What the?
that was basically Duca eliminating the 55 gallons of dog food from her colon as diarrhea.
Oh.
And she went upstairs to the hallway and laid a like 2-inch thick, 30 feet long, 5 feet wide course of doggy diarrhea to the staircase.
Wow. The cat started licking himself after that.
So Tony comes out of the bedroom, and now you have to remember, Tony is an albino, Filipino, flamenco dancer.
Yeah.
And he comes out.
Hey. Hi. An albino.
Filipino dancer.
Filipino.
So he hits the diarrhea.
He hits the
diarrhea on the floor. And he surfs the whole length of the hallway. And as he's going, the diarrhea is coming up and getting all over him. Oh. And it turns him into a Dalmatian. And then he hits the end of the staircase, which was a metal railing. His leg goes in it. He flips over. He breaks his knee, his hip, his collarbone, and his jaw. And he's covered in doggy diarrhea. So we call 911, and the EMS guys show up. And they see him stuck in the staircase, and they won't touch him. We're not touching that. So Neil and I had to get a garden hose and hose him down and take him off of the diarrhea staircase and bring him down to where the EMS guys had a gurney waiting. And, Neil was not that kind to this guy, and Tony was screaming and in severe pain, and they put him on the gurney, and they drive him off to a hospital. And Yvonne doesn't even go.
Somebody said shit happens.
Shit happens. That's right. Exactly. Shit happens. And she never went to see Tony again, ever, because immediately Don and I were just exhausted. We went upstairs and fell asleep in their bed, and Neil and Yvonne started to clean up, but they didn't last more than 20 minutes before they started screwing. And you know, like when we woke up in the morning, we heard this, "Ah, ah, 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 ah." And Neil told me that it was the most amazing sex he ever had because he was covered in doggy diarrhea while they were doing it, and it didn't stop them from doing it. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's Neil. Yes, yep. Mm-hmm. So anyway, this is the kind of bond I had with these people, right? So, you know, we clean the place up.
Diarrhea?
Yeah, doggy diarrhea.
He like loved diarrhea.
No, he didn't love it, but he was so enthralled with having sex, he didn't think twice about it.
Actually, psychologically, we talked about this before. When someone has an obsession with fecal matter,
Yes.
and they think of it
Anal retentive,
sexual way, it's a Freudian thing.
Freudian thing.
And
Yep.
Because when they were a
Who know what it?
child,
Who know? But it wasn't
when
that.
they were a baby,
It was.
something
I don't
and they
think
were
it was
free
that.
and
I don't.
they had
I don't
feces
think it
all
was
over
that. No.
themselves.
No. That was the
Then
only.
All of a sudden, something traumatic happened.
I
Their
knew.
parents
I
got a
knew him very
divorce or
well for
something.
many
Wait,
decades, and it
But there
wasn't
could
that.
be a psychological explanation, but
I don't
not
think
him
so.
in particular. He just loves sex. a
Right.
lot.
Right. And so
Yeah,
he didn't
just
let doggy
yeah.
diarrhea get in the way.
No.
And anyway, so we left that apartment. We didn't really finish cleaning up. The dog, her dog, it wasn't her dog, it was Tony's dog, so he took it to Tony's mom, and we stayed, I wish I knew the name. What's the big fancy, really fancy hotel in the middle of San Francisco downtown? It starts with an F, I think. But Donna loved it. So to make Donna happy, I had a bag of money. We went there, and we spent a few weeks there. Yvonne, Neil, me, in like a suite, you know? And we had a great old time, and we went to up, you know, US 1 along the coast and went to Malibu and went to LA and did all kinds of fun things as long as my money lasted. And then Neil had to go home. We put him on an airplane, and he was, again, one of my closest friends and still is, and we had that kind of platonic love. But we really did. I mean, we didn't diss each other ever.
Light.
What?
I'll get a light.
Yeah, go. But this light is pretty good. They can see me. Anyway, so that's why I went to Australia. And both Neil and I were writers. So we, you know, there was no internet. We just kept writing these long letters about what we were doing and what was going on. And at a certain point, he wrote me and said, I found my Donna. You know, I'm not going to be a slut anymore. I'm not going to sleep around. I just love this woman, and she's just like Donna. And she was. She too was born on the same day, almost to the second. So Leslie, that's Neil's Donna, and Yvonne and Donna were like these three girls that were like unbelievable. And a number of years later, those two girls lived with Donna and I in our loft in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. And now that's a whole nother story, but that's the kind of connection these three girls had. And Neil and I were like brothers. You know, we both loved the same kind of things in esoteria and technology, and our sense of humors were the same. And he was the Gary Trudeau of Australia. He was their #1 political comic. Neil, maybe it could be Neil Curtis, but if you went there and looked for, in 1977, who was the most, you know, like Gary Trudeau and Doonesbury in Australia, and Neil, that's the boy. Anyway, so that's why we went to Australia, because we were going to, you know, get the band back together. And he had found his Donna. So we land, and he gets us at the gate, and there's this girl that's hanging on to him, and, you know, hugging him and kissing him and squeezing him. And she doesn't look anything like Donna. She's kind of like, you know, a little, got a muffin top, and you know, was about 30 pounds overweight, and kind of has beer goggle eyes. She's drunk beyond belief, and so we. We go through customs, we go get our bags, and Pan Am has lost our bags. And I go up to the office and say, okay, listen, here's the receipts, you owe us 5 grand. Here is the international law that states that you have to pay us right now, give us a check. And the guy said, no, I don't. If you want to pursue this, you have to go back to New York. That's where you left from. I said, no, read the law. It doesn't say that. And the guy goes, I don't care. You know, we are under martial law right now, and I can do whatever the heck I want. Matter of fact, I could throw you in prison right now. I could blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, okay. But Donna was about to kill him, right? Anyway, so we...
And you could say that back then when they weren't as uptight, right?
No, they were very up. They were under martial law. That's the thing, kids. Australia was under martial law in 1977 because the Queen came there. They have a two-party system, Labor and Liberal. Liberal aren't very liberal. That's why the liberals here, you know what a liberal is here? Someone who feels guilty about being racist, sexist, and homophobic. That's a liberal. Anyway, so, they had the Labor Party, the union guys. And so for 125 years, the liberal guys had always been in power. But things got so bad for the working man that no matter how much beer the government gave people, they were pissed off. So they were going to vote in the Labor Party. And the Labor Party was going to kick all the transnational corporations out. And Australia's a treasure trove of minerals. Plus, there's Alice Springs there, Pine Gap.
I gotta use the
Well, go use the bathroom. Pine Gap makes Area 51 look like Disneyland. That's where all the weird shit is in Pine Gap, because it's out in the middle of Australia, 900 miles in any direction from anything, you know? So the Labor Party was going to kick all that out, and the Queen came and gave everyone a week off, right? And everyone was supposed to kiss her feet, but everyone went to the beach and told her to, get laid, fuck you. You know what fuck really means? Fornicate under king and church, or church and king, if you CK, church and king. Meaning the church and king owned your fornication. If you guys ever see Braveheart, where, they had this thing where the dukes and earls could, have sex with any of the people in their shire there. Well, it kind of still is that way. And Australia is totally owned, and the English Commonwealth, all those, they own all that, it's their Commonwealth. Anyway, so the Queen came and wanted to convince the folk to, not vote for the Labour, but vote for the, the Liberal Party. And basically, everyone said, screw you, Queen, and they went to the beach for a week. And she got so pissed off, she left. And just when the election came, and it was a landslide for the Labor Party, the Queen's representative, this guy who wears a dress like the Queen and has this big stick, stood up and never stands, he's always there, but never says or does anything. He stood up and disbanded the government and declared martial law for 3 years, right? That's why Australia does not have guns. They took everything away from them. And then how they got away with it was they gave everyone free booze. And basically, you could break any law under martial law, little ones, driving, speeding, crashing your car into a bunch of cars, things like that. Driving drunk. And they brought in drive-in bars, not just where you get a six-pack, but you get a cocktail mixed, right? And it was unbelievable. So we're at the airport, and this girl is all over Neil, and I goes, this isn't Leslie. Oh, no, this ain't Leslie. This is Vicky. And I said, but Neil, you told me you weren't doing this anymore. He goes, no, well, I needed a ride from Melbourne to Sydney, and she's her best friend. We're going to stay at her best friend's place. And I go, oh, okay. I was too tired, and I was trying to deal with Donna, keeping her from killing the guy at Pan Am, because all I had was in a little bag. I knew better. I told Donna, no, don't take all this stuff, but she had to bring all the stuff and lost it all, right? So we get in the car, and Vicky is driving, and she is drunk out of her mind. And she's like going up one-way streets and going through red lights and like clipping cars and nearly running people over. And she goes, "I love martial law because I could do anything." She park cars. And Donna, we're about to get run over by a trolley, and Donna grabs the steering wheel and pushes Vicky in the back seat and takes over the driving and gets us to a place where we're not going to die. And we end up where we're going to be at Vicky's friends. So we're going there, and Vicky, and it's like a council flat where people on welfare, and they're like at the top, and it's beautiful. We only need one light, John.
Well,
We don't need two lights.
this is gonna be awesome.
But you
Because
don't
now
blow.
I can hook up I can have a real green screen down here
Yeah,
finally.
yeah, okay, good.
So we can film videos on green screen after this and add like
Okay,
pictures
but
of
you
the people
you
you're
don't
talking
need
about.
just one light, and you don't need to blow me away with because every time you
I
put
was
these.
I was getting the green screen ready, and now I thought I'd happen to brighten it up. This
I
would
mean,
be awesome.
actually, this light is kind of nice. I like this light. But anyway, so we go to where this friend of Vicky's is, and we're walking. You know, we parked the car and we're walking, and it's like above, looking down into the city of Sydney, and the sun is going down, and it's really pretty, and I get, you know, a very strange feeling. So Neil, who's this person? And Vicky goes, "Oh, this is my friend, and she and Neil are having a baby." I said, "Neil?" And he goes, "Well, you know, stuff happens." And I said, "You told me that you found your Donna and you weren't going to be a slut anymore." And he goes, "It's a lot harder." Anyway, so I'm like, Donna is like totally catatonic. I'm like, you know, I don't want to be around anybody. So there's a really nice bench, and it's looking right into the city, and the sun is going down. And I say to the group, "Hey guys, I'm just going to sit here for a little bit and watch the sun go down and watch the lights come on in the city." And Neil goes, "Well, it's in that building up there, 6th floor, apartment 12. I said, "Okay, 612 building, okay, not a problem." So I sit down, and my wife sits down next to me and go, "You okay?" I go, "Yeah, I'm okay." She says, "You sure you're okay? You were crying on it?" I say, I'm okay. Just this airplane ride and everything." She goes, "Yeah, I understand." She goes, just going to get a bathtub and fall asleep and then go to bed." I said, "Sounds like a plan, baby. I'll see you in bed." She goes, "Okay." We kiss, and they walk away. So I'm sitting there, and I'm watching this all go down, and the sun is going down, the lights are coming on. Sydney is a beautiful city. And I'm watching it all, and the sun is going, you know, no, bounce it off of something else.
All right.
Don't hit me straight
I
on.
love that.
I don't.
It makes your face look perfect.
No, it doesn't. It blows me out.
It makes you look
No, it
perfect.
doesn't. It doesn't. Actually, this light is perfect.
You don't like it when you're like on a stage or in front of like all
Well,
the
not
people?
when every time you
I
do
have to
that,
feel- okay.
you blow it.
I'll do this.
Well, that's perfect. That's great. You don't have to you don't even have to turn on another one. That's perfect.
Yeah.
You
can
know?
diffuse it off the
Yes.
ceiling or something.
I'm gonna move over to this little guy over here. I want to sit down. Anyway, so it's going down. It's fine. It's great. And so it's going down, and it's beautiful. And I look right down the coastline of Australia, all 900 miles, and I can see it. I can see Melbourne. I can see Adelaide. I can see the South Pole. I can see the face on Mars. And I'm going, boy, that's pretty cool. And then I see the Aurora Borealis, and it comes and surrounds me. And then all of a sudden, did you ever see a big fire outside and somebody hits it and all the sparks go up? That's too bright, John. Way too bright. Turn it off. I mean, you don't need it. It looks great without it. It's fine. I'm lit up perfectly.
Okay.
Anyway, so I'm watching this, and I hear a voice say, "Al, young Al, step into the fire." And, you know, I look around and I'm no longer in Sydney. I'm in outer space, right? I'm looking down at the Earth. And there's a fire in front of me and the Earth down below. When I was talking about the movie 2001 and the baby being born onto the Earth from you know, the space guys. Anyway, so that's me. You know, I'm up there in space, and there's a big fire, and I step in the ring, and the sound, the two major spirit guides of at least the tribe I was with is they're two most ancient things before any other animal in the spirit realm was the ant of the ground and the turtle. And the turtle is the spirit that is earth and water, right? So those are the two spirits I see, is ant and when the antlers of the ant, they scrape together, it makes a scraping noise. And the sound of the turtle, when he clips his mouth, it makes a, like how I was using the sticks, click, 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 click. So that's the basic harmonics of the Aboriginal. Now they have the didgeridoo and they have a number of instruments, but the most basic, when they do a corroboree, a sacred ceremony, those are the elements that they start from. So I'm listening to this. They invite me into the circle. Everyone's dancing. I'm dancing. And I'm being told that I've been invited to be part of something important. And I'm like, so yeah, what's that? And they say, you know, you have to trust the universe, fate, and don't, you know, worry about anything. It'll all work out. Everything, you know, you're going to be doing stuff. You have no expectations of what you're going to be doing, but everything we want you to do is nothing that you're even thinking about, but you're going to do it because you will do it. And so I go, okay. And then all of a sudden, I'm being shook. Like really, like
something about me, the interdimensional something of John.
Yeah. He's popping in. John is interdimensional.
I didn't know what he or she said.
Anyway, so
I couldn't tell. I didn't read. I didn't get.
And the heat, you know. So there I was in a fire, but that fire was warm and comforting and loving, and totally empathetic to my soul, and bringing out things that I didn't even know I had. Bringing me the 5 tools: humility, patience, empathy, forgiveness, and healing. And so I'm being shook like a bag of potatoes, and my eyes up, and it's like high noon, and it's like I'm in a blast furnace, and I'm going, and this guy, are you out there right now? Are you out there? And it's a policeman shaking me. And I wake up, and I go, yeah, what's the problem, officer? And he goes, well, you've been lost for 72 hours. Your wife and friends have been frantic, and everyone's looking for you. Where did you go? And he finds me and shakes me on the bench that I sat down with my wife on. Meaning that's where I left. That's where I was watching the sun go down and all of this happen. And when the policeman shakes me awake, it's high noon, 72 hours later. And you know, he takes me, gets on his radio, hey, we found him, and you know, takes me up to this apartment, and my wife is all, oh honey, what happened to you? I said, I was down, we looked there 100 times, you weren't there. Meaning, somehow I went someplace else, and that's called dream time, right? Little did I know. So anyway.
Could you fill in anyone who may have just shown up as to what's happened so far? I know that so far you took a plane with your wife over to Australia, had a life-changing moment when you were watching
in the WC,
water,
in the water closet,
sudden, in the plane,
in the toilet,
and all of a sudden it slowed down, and then
it was going when we were in the northern hemisphere. Whenever you flush a toilet, look down, you'll see it goes clockwise.
Okay.
But in the southern hemisphere, it goes counterclockwise.
Then the Aborigines knew you were going to show up there.
Yep.
And then what happened? Were you what happened after that? I missed the story, and they may have missed it. The new people, just to fill everybody in. Did you meet the Aborigines yet?
No,
You still haven't met them.
no, no.
Some
I
funny
mean,
thing happened where you walked
I met them in Dreamtime, but I didn't go to
in
their.
Australia, in
Yeah,
Sydney.
yeah, in Sydney, right?
And so now you're gonna get to meet the Aborigines.
Well, no. Now what happens is, so basically,
Okay.
Pan Am has lost all our everything. So we have no real money. So we go back with Neil and Vicky to Neil's house in Melbourne. And Neil is quite a famous cartoonist in Australia, political newspaper cartoonist.
Did Owl get lucky with an Aborigine? Oh,
No,
wait.
no. I was married and very monogamous.
Oh yeah. Here.
Right? I was
First wife?
First wife, Donna Ann. Yep. So anyway, so we go to Melbourne, and Neil gets me a job, and I and in Australia, what's really interesting, the Australian folk
You don't have to hear Ian.
have a animosity towards Americans, but at the same time, they love them, right? And they want to be a cowboy. They want to be a Hollywood star.
Yeah.
You know, all of the Australian guys,
Hollywood star.
Mel Gibson, they all. Anyway, so, and when I was there, and it still is this way, when I was there was only 7 million people in all of Australia. And I basically had a pretty good resume, so I got really a lot of work. Melbourne was the theater town, and Sydney was the movie town. And so, I built a nightclub. What do? I build nightclubs. So I built a nightclub there, and this guy was the big theater guy, and I was his pet American, and I was building him this club out of this really beautiful 19th century factory building. And he's paying me real good and showing me a good time, but he was a real jerk. And in Australia, every kind of thing is run by a singular guy. Like I said, Reginald Ansett owned everything that was transportation. Rupert Murdoch owned everything that was communications. And this guy, I forget his name, he's a real jerk. And he was worse than the movie guy. Who's the movie guy who just got pegged for having sex with all the young stars?
Either Kevin Spacey or Bill Cosby or Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah, he was like Harvey Weinstein. He was really obnoxious guy. Anyway, we're at this party, and he is like being obnoxious to everybody because he could. Meaning, if anyone complained, they wouldn't have any work in theater or films. That's how powerful this guy was. And he was really hitting on this poor young girl. And I went over there and said, listen, buddy, leave her alone. And he goes, well, she likes it. I go, no, she doesn't. And every woman here is going to throw up. And I'm going to throw up. Not only am I going to throw up, I'm going to pick this chair and hit you over the head with it. And keep hitting you over the head until you're damaged. So stop it. He goes,
Me?
well, you can't talk that way to me. I said, fuck you, asshole. He goes, you'll never work in Australia again. I said, I don't give a fuck. I'm from New York, and I'm going back there. You're a lame asshole who lives in this little shitty town called Melbourne. Eat shit and die, motherfucker. And my wife was on my arm going, I'm so proud of you. And all the women are like, there's one man who will stand up to this jerk.
You're from New York City?
Yes, I'm from New York City, and eat shit and die, motherfucker.
No!
And I walk out, and of course, yes, I am
But
never...
You're never like that, usually.
Never, but this guy was so obnoxious.
Okay.
And I was a lot younger. Anyway, and I didn't give a fuck. I was expecting to go back to New York any day now, but no. So, Neil gets me a gig with the Australian government, and they have this thing called the Avant-Garde Theatre of Australia, and they've just taken over a building very similar to and the guy was a moron because we had this blowout before I finished the job, meaning the most important part is where you make everything work, and I just walked away. And like weeks later, he goes, no one can figure anything out that you did. Can you come? I said, shit, eat, die, fuck off. The only way I would do
I've never
this.
heard it in that order.
You
you tell him to just use a bathroom, eat food, and one day just die.
No, but
Oh,
anyway,
okay.
I was being as crass as I could to this
No.
guy. And anyway, so long story short, I get this gig with the Avant-Garde Theatre of Australia, which comes from Canberra, their capital, so they have nothing to do with this moron. And so they're building this big theater, and I came from George and George, which is the biggest theater building company, architects, construction, and I was one of their main electricians. So, you know, this was right up my thing. So they took this big factory building and turned it into two really beautiful performance spaces, two black boxes,
Oh, my
and about
gosh.
four musical performance spaces. Really gorgeous place, and a big common thing with a restaurant, and it was beautiful. And so they're all, and they have a big art school, Monash University in Melbourne. And there was a woman named Punch Hawks, who's a visual artist. And in the 60s and early 70s, they were going through an amazing art scene of their own. And it was just too bad that everyone in that scene was doing heroin. And they thought it was, heroin in Australia at that time was people smoking pot in America. And so, they were all strung out. And she wrote a book called Monkey's Paw. And out there, you two audience, go see if you can find it on Amazon. Punch Hawks is her name, and the book is Monkey's Paw. And she's a brilliant writer, great novelist. I mean, she's a great artist in anything she does.
Was it like the most dangerous game people that if they found a monkey's paw or something like that,
No,
they killed?
no,
Or they killed those exotic animals?
no.
Okay.
It came from a 19th century novel in England, and it fit the same kind of what was going on. And it came from the fact that England was the biggest drug dealer on the planet, that they were taking, opium from India and making all their colonies saturated. Like that was what the opium wars in China were about. Because it wasn't China trying to get the English to do opium, it was the Queen trying to force opium on the Chinese. Anyway, and that's the Boxer Rebellion and all this stuff. The French Connection, you go look at it. So go find Punch Hawks, that novel, and you'll see what kind of artist she was. Just an amazing person. So she came in and was, the art director. She was the artist soul of this place. So there were all these visual artists and performance artists and actors and all this kind of stuff. And she was writing her PhD thesis on the carnival. Now this is something I've been hot on forever. And basically in America, after the Civil War, what changed America from an agrarian society to a materialist industrial society was the railroad, the telegraph, and the carnival and electric lights. So, after the Civil War, everything west, there was just these little towns that were like out there in the middle of nowhere, and they were like, everyone shared and traded, and there was no cash or banks or anything until the railroad showed up. And so, the railroad shows up, Mr. Sears, so they come with a carnival, Wild West show, carnival, and it's, out in the middle of nowhere, put up the big tents, got electric lights, Mr. Edison's DC and the light bulbs, and Mr. Sears gives them this big catalog, and all the pages are like toilet paper, so people are in the privy, or the WC, and they're pinching a loaf, and they wipe their ass with pages from Sears' catalog, but they're also reading the catalog in the privy, and that's what you do in a toilet, and, and he actually was the first thing that had girly underwear ads, meaning this guy was smart. He knew what guys were going to do in the privy with that. And people would say, oh, look, there's a wood stove. Boy, I can buy that from Sears for $5. And all they had to do was go down to the railroad yard, give $5 to the guy there. He would telegraph, deet, 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 and 2 weeks later, it would show up on a train. It was just like Amazon, just like the internet. And so Punch's idea, so she wanted to make a carnival to do the reverse, to bring higher consciousness through the carnival to the public. And so it would be like injecting them with an antibiotic against materialism. And we did it. We built a circus with a tent and high wire, trapeze, the whole works. And most circuses are done with people who are born into it. Uncle Luigi teaches you how to, no, everybody here. So we had to do it in a different way. So like the high wire and trapeze, we did right over the audience.
I had an Uncle Luigi.
He had Uncle Luigi.
Yeah.
And so the girls and guys would go up this big tall ladder to the top of the tent, and then they would go over here and they would do the high wire and the trapeze, but they were only 15 feet from the audience. It looked like they were way up there, but they were really just, so if they fell, they would just fall on top of the people. Anyway, we had stuff, and the band was on this platform that was on a track that slowly, slowly, slowly moved across the stage, went up the side of the tent, and at the end of the show, the band was upside down above the audience. I mean, we did all these things, juxtaposition to the audience, to change their frame of reference so they could open their minds to different things. Like we had animal acts, but instead of like lions, tigers, and bears, there was this woman we had who was an amazing costumier. And at 40 feet, her costume of a lion looked just like a lion, but it was a human being inside. So we had, you know, lions, tigers, and bears running around without any bars. You know, if you had real lions, tigers, and bears, you couldn't like them run around amongst the audience. They'd eat the audience.
Was it a circus that you put on?
Yes, this was a circus. And it was funded by the federal government through the Avant-Garde Theatre of Australia, which was at, so I spent a good 6 months with these guys, and we took this show on the road.
Can you see Pam, or
What do you mean, can I see? Not very good, kids. I can't see very well.
running smooth on my end? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's all running smooth. But, you know, guys, I don't read what you say. And the chat, the real chat you should have is with each other. I want you to build a community because I'm going to do the same thing that I did in 1977 with this group of artists in Australia. I'm going to bring it to the United States and do the same thing. Bring an inoculation.
You said that back then, but you're not going to now.
I'm doing it now, kids.
You are?
This summer, yes.
How are you going to fund it?
They are.
What is it?
They. The audience, the YouTube audience.
No, wait,
They're going to be part of it. They're
What
going to
is
pay
it?
for it. Circus. So
What do
when
you
I
mean?
came back from
An
New York,
avant-garde art exhibit that resembles a
no,
circus,
it
but
will
it's
be
not?
a circus. It'll be
I
a
don't
carnival.
understand.
Back in the day, back way in the
That's
day,
a lot of work.
the
to do.
Mesopotamians, the Egyptians, the Sumerians, the the Romans, the Greeks, all of their culture is based on the carnival. Whenever you see the Lancelot movies, they're always having guys where jousting. Well, those were carnivals. Those were the times when the common folk could interact with the culture, be the culture of the society. And that's what we need now, kids. We don't need Amazon bringing us our culture. We don't need Mr. Facebook bringing our culture because they're all owned by the corporate structure. You know, Mr. Yahoo Facebook, that guy's a total loser. I mean, I bet you he can't even write a string of code, meaning the guys who owned the NSA said, hey, listen, kid, you're a total loser here at Harvard. Wouldn't you like to be a zillionaire? Here, be the poster child for this. Just like Donald Trump is being the poster child of whatever is going on here now. The only way we can really do anything, forget being a liberal, forget being a conservative, forget being a Republican or Democrat. Those are just wings of the same corporate bird. We have to, and not, go to war, but we have to bring an alternative aesthetic to the folk. That has to be done in every little town. And I'm going to go around and visit you all, and you guys, I'm going to spunk you up, and you're going to take the show on the road in your little town. And you're going to build, and this is what Carnival has always done. So, I spent about 5-6 months. Everyone in the circus learned how to juggle but me. Even my wife could juggle. I was the only guy who couldn't juggle. I could ride a unicycle, I couldn't juggle. But that was my job. My job at the circus was to be the electrician, to be the photographer, to be the psychotherapist, to be the shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologic alchemist. And Punch understood that, so that was my gig. Where all these other guys, and it was amazing to do this gig because we were all a family. There was no real star. You know, it was, you know, did you, any of you go see the movie with Hugh Jackson, The Greatest Show, where they, Barnum Bailey, it's a musical, it's in the movie house, it might even still be there. That's probably the best movie I've seen so far because he took all these freaks and made this family that was such an amazing show that everyone wanted to see it. And that was what our circus was. And when we brought our circus to town, no matter how conservative, because, you know, the little towns out there in the middle of nowhere, Australia, those guys were just drunk, crackhead, you know, Aussie guys who.
You can keep talking. It's just getting different shots as you're telling the story. You want it always on yourself?
Who cares? The audience is really the only person we should talk to. You can move it a little closer so it could be a closer shot. Yeah, just put it right there. Yep, perfect. Yep.
You don't mind close-ups?
No, I love close-ups.
Wow.
You know, a two-shot
I
is...
hear a lot of guys are like, I'm the same way.
I don't care.
I don't care how close somebody gets to my face, but women usually don't like a very close-up. I don't know why.
I don't know why either.
Or that's how my ex-wife was.
Yep. But I don't care. You know, I'm not thinking my look too fat or too thin or too whatever. And so, you know, you get out of the way and the light will be perfect, John. Yep, see, light's perfect. So, we did the circus. It was, you know, I learned a lot about the circus and theater. I mean, I was already a theater guy, but, so that's the you know, 5 months of that, right? And then I had other gigs. And then through that same cultural entity and our exposure, and I was the shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic anthropologist slash alchemist. We were invited through Leslie because her brother was married to one of the Aborigines, and so we went up to this tribe that in the early 70s, there were a few hundred of them, and when they found that they had cobalt and uridium and other, you know, valuable minerals, they basically went up there and just put a gun to everyone's head and blew their brains out and left them to their bones to be picked. But there was a small handful of folk who were out picking berries who didn't get their brains blown out, and they were the guys who waited for me the first night. And so we went...
Have you met the Aborigines?
Not yet.
Okay, so anyone tuning in now, he still hasn't met the Aborigines. He's been on his way from America
to Australia, from Sydney to Melbourne.
He kept dreaming,
having these dreams about these guys. And I had no idea who and what these guys were. And I would ask people, and they said, oh, well, that happens to certain people. And when we went to Tasmania to visit a friend's aunt, Tasmania is where the strongest Aborigine folk were. And before white people could pick the gun up and blow their brains out, the Aborigines would be gone. And so they had to burn the whole friggin' place to push the Aborigines. Thanks for getting in the light.
Plants are pretty cool.
Yeah.
Those plants are pretty cool.
And so, so if you were a white person in Tasmania, you had to be very cool because if you argued, you would have this terrible dream because in the museum in Tasmania was the last Aborigines, the last Tasmanian Aborigines, and it had a bullet in her head and a bullet in her baby's head.
Oh man, that's terrible. Ariella Brewis having a douche.
And they had stuffed her and put her in the museum in Tasmania. And so if you had any kind of nasty feelings, you would have that dream that night. And so everybody in Tasmania were these kind of very sweet, blissful artist people who did a lot of because they had sheep and all they did was knit things. But anyway, um, that's when I really got the 411 that um, the Aborigines were more than what people said they were. Because basically it's, oh, Aborigines, they're just drunk Indians. They're terrible people. They steal things. They don't, you know,
Oh,
we give them welfare, and what do? They buy alcohol and play cards and lose their money. That's because the Aborigines had no care for the material world. They had no care for you know
There.
had no care for money, right? And they would give money to anybody. Oh, you need it? Here's some money. So anyway, we get this assignment to go up to be with this Aborigines tribe, and we're going to be there with Leslie's brother, and so we go up there, and so we take. And do they give us a car? No, they give us a bus ticket. So we go from Melbourne to Adelaide to Perth, and then we go up the other coast, and we go to Broome, and then we come down and we hit Pine Gap, and then we hit Ayers Rock, and then we hit where the tribe was, Christmas Creek in the Northern Territories. So anyway, so first we go to Adelaide, and we see some friends who are artists. That's kind of an arty town. And then we go to Perth, which is it's like Houston, really oil town, very modern, and they have a university there, and the quote-unquote experts, the Aborigines, are there. And they go, wow, oh, you're going to go see these guys. And the guy who is the head expert goes, well, they're like children. They're very innocent, and they're naive. They'll never let you take a picture of them because they think it's stealing their soul. And he goes, and they don't have a written language, and they're not very sophisticated, and they're like Stone Age children, and it's just that we've given them things that they have any kind of, life because we've given it to them, right? Okay. So that's the quote-unquote expert tells me this. So we then go up and at Broome. Broome is an amazing place. That's where cultured pearls were invented by this French guy, and Broome is all of these like Asian, because it's kind of close, near not the Philippines. Well, Philippines are over there, China's over here, Japan's over here. It's right in that neck of the woods, and all these little Polynesian islands, and so there are all these unbelievably beautiful Polynesian people, French people, Australian people, and a couple of Germans, and they've for the last 100 years been making babies, and those people are gorgeous, tall and beautiful and noble. And there were these women who were walking around all the time, almost naked. They're kind of wearing these kind of little, they look like, can't even explain, they're like Greek togas, but not. And they go in the water, and they only have little masks, and they dive down there, and, and these are all cultured pearls, right? And so they go down there and check them out, and if they're ready, they pop them out and bring them up. And it was like an amazing place because it's so far away from everybody that it's got its own culture, and it's all these things have come through for the last 100 years, and yet still nobody touches it. And so, well, okay, that's pretty interesting. So then and how we keep staying in these places is you get on the bus, and they stop in these places because there's really nothing in between. There's some what they call cattle. Just these little places where people bring their cattle to be trucked out. But there's no real cities or towns or, just the smallest of nothing, except for these few. So every time we stop at one of these places, we go to the bathroom, we get something to eat, we stretch, and it's about 2 hours, you get a break. Otherwise, you got to be on the bus. And my wife would go up and take pictures. And the bus guy, when he wants to leave, he leaves. And if you aren't ready, he just takes your bags off and drives away. Now, the next bus isn't like tomorrow. It's like weeks later. So every time my wife, honest, she'll be right back. She's just taking some pictures. She'll be right, you know. And after the first time, and we had such an amazing experience being left behind, that I knew this was going to happen every time, so I didn't care. And I knew that we'd meet somebody amazing, and we'd have, a 2 week little extravaganza stuff. So in Broome, we met this German guy who was just really amazing, and he had been, again, a Nazi, and he had come to Australia to work on the hydrogen bomb because they blew up a lot of them in Australia, and the missile, Wallam missile range, and he retired to Broome. Instead of staying, he goes, well, you'll go up to Pine Gap and Alice Springs, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But in Broome, he was happy because all these French girls and these beautiful people, and he was there were a couple of German guys like him, and they could just kick back. They didn't have to worry about anything. No one's going to come looking for him here. And he was in his 80s, and he had a nice ranch, and everything was beautiful. And we stayed with him, and he really thought Donna was cute, and he was a Nazi, so he had a bunch of Leicas.
Oh, is
and
this the real Nazi that?
No, it wasn't the doctor in Brazil, but it was like him.
The really old one?
Yeah, he was old. He wasn't, like,
That looked young?
yeah, he wasn't that guy. Now this guy was,
That's in if somebody wants to see that, is that in the Scar story or in the other?
no, that was in the Brazilians, the Nazis from Brazil, the boys from Brazil.
That's in one of the videos.
Yeah. The story I talk about Brazil. But this is Broome, Australia. So we spend a week with him, and then the bus shows up, we get on that, and we go up to Alice Springs, and again, we stay there. And I wanted to stay there because I wanted to check that place out. So I was in this place called the Rundle Bookshop, and
You haven't met the Aborigines yet.
no, but I keep dreaming about them. They're like all around me in dream time, and they're like, warming me up for dream time. So we're in Alice Springs, and again, the bus leaves without us. By this time, I don't even worry about it. I find the nicest place to go hang out, and so I can see Donna walk by. And so I go into this coffee shop that's German, really German. This is in Alice Springs. And really great strudel. The Germans, one of the greatest things they can do culinary-wise is baked goods. They are amazing. And also pretty good with strudel and
You're German.
yeah, I'm German, and that's why I know, because I had a German grandma. But they also have schnitzel, and they also have lots of different kinds of wieners. And so, if you go to Oktoberfest, you're going to have a brat of some type. Anyway, so I meet this guy, and he's sitting out. He has a little coffee shop, and I sit down with him, and he's got lederhosen. He's like not hiding the fact that this boy's German. He's got all this little Nazi pictures on the behind the bar, and so I sit down and we start talking. I said, so you're either a geneticist, a computer guy, radar guy, or a rocket guy. Which are you? And he goes, I'm a radar guy. I said, oh, and we start talking about Nikola Tesla and microwave and ELF, and he's like quite impressed. And so they actually fucking have cell phones. And this is 1977. He gets on his little cell phone or whatever, maybe it was from Star Trek, and he calls up a buddy of his who comes over, and this guy is a geneticist. And he was a Mengele boy too, but he too is pretty old. He didn't have the young look as the boys from Brazil had. But he was a plant geneticist, right? And so he had worked for Dow and people like that, and for Monsanto, and he was all about plants. And so we started talking, and then Donna showed up, and these guys, and these Nazi guys just had the hots for my wife. And but they were nice. They were like Dutch uncles, meaning they weren't like lecherous guys. They just constantly said how beautiful she was and how great she was. And they had tons of Leicas. And man, Donna just loved Leicas. So, we went, the rocket guy, he had his own little harem. So he lived upstairs from the coffee house, and we met the family, and that was nice. But the other guy, he lived closer towards the water, you know, and because everyone thinks Australia is a desert, but they have this monsoon system that just comes right over and floods the whole place, and they have all of these crevasses. I don't even know what to call them. They're like the Grand Canyon, but small. They go hundreds of miles, but they're only 30, 40 feet, but they're, 100 feet down, and the water fills it up, and they have, trails that you go down. It's all really soft and cool sand, and, outcroppings, and there are things growing along the water that you can eat. And so if you just look, you're on the bus, you look, it looks like a desert, but you go there and there are all these, there's water everywhere, but most people don't realize that who look at just postcards. But anyway, so he lives near a thing like that, and we go there, and he has the most amazing hydroponics growing. And he has bud like you cannot believe. I mean, just, and he has every kind. He had mixed a mango with a pear. So it was a mango without the big pit and the soft skin of a pear. It was like, and he would make, and he had a pineapple and a banana, and it just, all these fruits mixed together that were just orgasmic. And he would make schnapps out of them. And he put other little things in there. So it was as close to the third teapot of the crone as you could get without being the third teapot of the crone. And so we spent a whole week with that guy, and he had great stories, and he was just the nicest Nazi you ever wanted to live. And so when people, I've had a lot of, I have to say that everyone who contacts me on my Gmail, which is thedudeawake42 at gmail.com, over 1,000 people have contacted me so far, and you've all been so sweet, so nice. I just love you all. And that's why I know when I hit the road and come visit you guys, we're going to do some serious having fun and changing of the world through art and everything you guys and me want to do. So, but there have been a lot of people who go, especially when I talk about them, how could you hang out with them? How come you didn't just waggle your finger and say how terrible they were? It's not my job to judge folk. And they're being nice to me, And if you go back to the story of the boys from Brazil, that doctor, he was not a nice guy. If I had pissed him off in any which way, I would have been fertilizer, right? So I knew this. Plus, he had information I wanted to know. And there came a point where we actually had this platonic friendship. And the more I did that, the more he changed in a positive way. And so that's how you change the world. Not to fight them with the cross and the sword and the shield. No. They want you to fight that way. You can only change things through love. The only thing that exists is love. If you go for the illusion of violence, you're not going to win anything, because it's the same, the crews that have been fighting, the serpent and the eagle, they're two wings of the same bird. Neptune is the serpent. The head guy of the Greeks in Mount Olympus, he's the eagle. The Nazis were the eagle. The guys in South America, all of the indigenous people were the serpent. The serpent is about knowledge. The eagle is about force. Both, if you go from the same point of view, it's the same thing. The only way you can have human coming together, human ascension, which is what we're put here to do, ascend, not to evolve. That's a joke. It never happened. Humans are somebody's science experiment. That's why I love Clark's 2001. That scene where the monkey is just, scratching his butt, and then the monolith is in front of him, and he's like, "Ooh, what the fuck's that?" and touches it. Bingo! It changes him. He then picks up a femur from the pile of bones and starts hitting things. A tool. Ooh, he's a tool maker. What is the first thing he does? He kills the other crew. And he starts, you know, whacking the heck out of the other guys who were around the water hole. And, after he kills them and freaks everybody out, he goes nuts, like, orgasmically nuts, and just beats the poor dead guy into a pulp. And then he throws the femur up in the air and it twists in slow motion, and then it goes out of the frame and it comes back in as a spaceship. That's us, guys. The guys before us, the pre-hominins before us, were great. They were smarter than us. They were bigger, stronger, everything. The thing that was put into us by, the Nephilim, who came down here looking for metonic gold and other isotopes and things, basically said, oh, we need some worker drones. So they genetically took some of those hominins and made us, Homo sapien sapien. And what makes us different from the monkey guys is that we're violent, that we will kill. The other guys didn't, and that's what Clark's first scene in that movie, which was the last thing they shot. And so that's where we're at, kids. We can either go out that way or in that movie, the most human character in that movie, 2001: A Space Odyssey, was Hal. He was neurotic. The guys who were the astronauts, they were robots, the way, they're, yeah, boy, the computer's fucking up, and they're like talking really calm, really not a problem. They're out there in the middle of nowhere, and if something screws up, they're toast, right? And Hal has been lied to, and that's why he's killing off the humans, His boss, his God, who invented him, said, listen, most important thing is the mission. If something screws up, you're in charge, kill them all. And Hal kind of goes psychotic by getting these two. He's told never to lie to his crew, but he has to lie to them. Always protect them, but he's going to kill them, right? So there Dave is. Hal, open the pod bay door. Sorry, Dave, can't do that. Now, Dave is in the pod. He's got no space helmet. He ran away out there without space. Dumb Dave. Now, if I was Dave, I wouldn't say, Hal, come on, open the door. Oh, sorry, Dave, can't do it. Hal, please. Dave, can't do it. Hal. Dave never I would say, you motherfucker, open the door. Get this thing up. Ah! Dave never does that. Hal wants to kill Dave. The only thing closest to human on that crew was Hal. So that's, the most amazing thing about that show. All the humans are robots. And that's where we're going, kids. You keep looking on I love that movie because they had their cell phones. They had their screens. The guy's talking to his, Skyping his daughter back on Earth from the spaceship, Those guys knew what was going on. There's a great, if you YouTube Arthur C. Clarke, he was a great scientist. He worked for UNIVAC, and they made this great little thing in 1958 or something. And they're in this, Sperry UNIVAC computer that's like the size, 300,000 square foot building with one computer that has, less computing power than the watch that tells you your pulse. Anyway, he's there, and the air conditions are going, and it's just a cacophony of noise. And and everyone's smoking, and he picks up a pack of cigarettes, and he goes, in the future, this computer will be this big, and he holds up the pack of cigarettes. And everyone on Earth will have a device like this size. And everyone will be able to communicate with each other by this device. They will do all of their business by this device. They will read all the books in the world will be on this device. I mean, he's telling the people about what we are now in 1958, right? And he goes, the most amazing thing of this, he goes, and the screen will become the new religion, the new God, the glowing blue God. And that's what it is. All you guys there are looking at the screen like the blue God is telling you what's going on. Anyway, so that's why I love Arthur C. You should read everything Arthur C. Clarke. He's kind of, I'm like, I'm going to say, he's like me. He wrote novels, short stories, and treatises. I mean, these amazing papers. So, anyway, and all these guys were buddies. The guy who did Star Trek, who's, invented it, all these people were buds. So they knew what was coming. And that's what I'm telling you guys. This technology, Nikola Tesla had it down in the 1880s. He was transmitting, not only did he invent alternating current and the neon and the fluorescent tube, television, radio, radar, X-ray. He invented all these things. He just kind of did it one day in his lab, and like the X-ray. He made the X-ray tube, and he called up his buddy Rankin and said, "Hey, I got this tube. You might like it." Rankin screwed around with it, and he got the credit for inventing X-rays. No, Tesla did. Marconi, everyone thinks he made no. Marconi stole a bunch of devices that Tesla made and put them together and made a radio. Marconi just sent dips and dashes across a river, a body of water. Tesla at Wardenclyffe was transmitting. He was siphoning off current from the vacuum of the different dimensions that we now are starting to look at through the new physics of string theory. But he was doing it in the 1890s. Morgan bankrolled him, and Tesla perfected this. Not only was Tesla was going to have TV, radio, like everything that we have now, instead of with satellites, he was going to have the bias of the planet be the carrier frequency. And today we use that technology. We have all this technology, right? The B-2 bomber. How come it can fly from the middle of America to anywhere in the whole friggin' world on one tank of gas? Well, because it's not really running on that tank of gas. It is running on this other energy source, which makes a field go around that aircraft that nulls out gravity. The B-2 bomber is like a balloon. I mean, it's just hanging there by a string. And that's why a few of the B-2 bombers have just fallen out of the sky, because aerodynamically, not too good. It has this field around it that makes it, lighter than air, and it has no friction as it goes through the air, so it can go pretty fast if nothing's pushing it around it, causing friction. That's the thing that slows things down, the second law of thermodynamics. Anyway, that aircraft, Nikola Tesla invented all of that in the 1880s, right? So, and kids, don't believe anything I say. But what's beautiful about the internet, and you should enjoy it while it's still here. I'm amazed that DARPA gave it to us, and it kind of slipped out, and I don't think they ever thought it was going to be like it is now. And it was this Faustian bargain that they said, if we give them this technology, we will be able to see everything they're doing, keep an eye on them, basically have 1984. That's what we got right now. And, listen in on everything they do, think. And, by the way, because this device here is being run on microwaves, if that thing is touching you, it's the 6 to 8 cycle right into your brain. Just what this little device here runs on the same frequency as your body. So it can download your consciousness into some mainframe over there. So if we aren't in the matrix, we soon shall be, unless we as a crew go have a good time. The only thing that these guys are scared of is love's unconditional forgiveness and love's unbelievable ability of co-creation. That's why Nikola Tesla, Edison had to steal, sweat, and kill to get his inventions. Nikola Tesla invented them in dream time. It would blow Edison's mind. I mean, Tesla came from Serbia, Croatia, went to Paris to study there, and they were building their new phone system, and they totally had screwed it up. And they were just spending more and more money on it. And the guys who owned it, Tesla walked into their offices. I can fix this thing in 3 months. All I want is $20,000. And they said, well, we've already spent like 20 million, so sure, go for it. He did, and they were like, whoa. So they gave him $5,000. Yeah. But we'll give you a letter to Mr. Edison. So they gives, the head guy, the smart guy of that scene, writes a letter for Tesla to hand to anybody. This guy is the smartest guy I know. He can do anything. If you're smart, you'll hire him. So he goes to Edison, gives him the letter. Edison says, fine. Listen, I got a real problem. I have this dynamotor that's supposed to run my electric system in New York, and I can't make it work. Everything's done, but it won't work. And if I don't get it to work in the next, 2 months, boy, I'm screwed. So Tesla says, no problem. I want $50,000, and Edison says, sure. Shake hands on it, right? Right. So they shake hands. So Tesla does it, right? And it works, and it makes Edison the man. I mean, that's when the lights light up in New York, because of what Tesla did, not what Edison did. I mean, of the 600 patents that Edison had, they're all in different handwritings, meaning he had this Menlo Park place where they took people straight off the boat and put him in his thing and work for Mr. Edison. And when they would come up with something, he would take their patent, put his name to it, and that's where the phonograph, the movie, he didn't invent any of this. The light bulb, nothing. He basically had slave labor. Tesla would visualize it in dream time, invent it, build it, test it, run it, do everything to it, then wake up, make a drawing, hand it to his technician, say, make it, it would work first time, every time. And that's what he did with the dynamotor, and that's how he could fix it. It took Edison like 4 years to screw it up. Tesla fixed it in 2 months. And so when he said, okay, give me the 50 thou, Edison, ha, 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 oh, you just don't understand American humor. I was only kidding. Get lost now. So, smart people understood who Tesla was, so they kind of bankrolled him and gave money. He had laboratories, and I actually had one of Tesla's laboratories in Lower Manhattan on the west side over near Chambers and Hudson. It was called Mohawk Electric, right on the corner of Duane and Hudson, right where Duane Park is. And I could see how he could invent stuff. It was this beautiful, had windows on 3 sides. One side looked straight out at the Hudson, one looked down West Broadway to the World Trade Center, one looked down Chambers to the Brooklyn Bridge. It was pretty beautiful walk. And I could feel Tesla there. And he had apparatus still stuck in the walls there. I mean, it was, being the Tesla pile it was like I was in heaven. Anyway, so where are we going on this story? Oh, yes, I'm in Alice Springs, right, in Australia. And I meet this Nazi guy. And we're back at his hacienda eating amazing things and drinking amazing things and, having out-of-body experiences. And the Aborigines are still talking to me. And I go in the Rundle Bookshop, which is named after a bookshop in Melbourne. And it's an antiquarium bookshop, very strange books, because there are very strange people in this town. They're all, paperclip people and, technical, people. Like I said, this whole town was like, it was, a place that didn't exist. And all of the spy information came down to them and then got, so the CIA, NSA, you name it, the whole alphabet city was there. And that's what the Australian people want to get rid of. This is like a pretty sick place. And they blew off, and why the Australian people now are getting barbecued because there's no ozone over their country or over the Pacific is because we blew up hydrogen bombs there. Not only that, we shot them into the ionosphere and detonated them. One thing, we just blew them, like when we blew them up on the atolls, but no, we put them on Nike Zeus missiles and shot them into the troposphere and blew the whole ozone on that side of the planet, right? And that's why, man, you got to wear an umbrella when you are in. I mean, everyone's got skin. Everyone I knew in Australia died of skin cancer. Everyone. And when I was in the outback, I used to wear, a caftan and had a big beach umbrella that I walked around with. And all the Aborigines said, "Smart boy," because all the white people were running around in Speedos getting a tan. They're all dead. Anyway, so we're in Alice Springs, and I'm in the Rundle Bookshop, and I meet a guy named Stan Deo. And Stan is a very interesting guy. And he's written some pretty amazing books. And none dare call it conspiracy? No. Oh, but his book was published in the late 60s. So his daddy was a rocket scientist and in the Air Force. And he and Stan went to the Air Force Academy. And Stan was going to be like head of the Air Force. And he got himself involved in an experiment that kind of blew his brain. And they basically shipped him out. And he was like Corey Good, meaning that whole thing of where they took people off the planet and, put them on Mars and did all kinds of very strange things. What was Alternative 3? Go read that book. And The Brain Drain. And Stan was part of all of that. And he wrote this very strange book about all of that. And he had to self-publish it. And so I got to talk to him. And I kind of knew about all this stuff through my antiquarian connections in New York and around and in Europe. But to meet a guy who was part of it was pretty interesting. And Stan is even more interesting because if you were to go, he's on things like Coast to Coast, and he has his own podcasts, and there's like 12 Stan Deos because he has done.
And you haven't gotten to the Aborigines yet.
Sure, this whole thing is the Aborigines are bringing me through all. This is one big Aborigines experience.
But have you met them yet?
Yes, in dream time, guys.
But did you get to the place where you actually met them in real
Not
life?
quite yet. Not quite yet.
Okay, good. That's for the new people watching.
Right.
For the new people watching, he hasn't gotten to where he's even met the Aborigines yet.
I have in dream time.
You can start watching here. It'll be
Right,
all right.
right. So, anyway, I've seen, so Stan gives me the 4-1 between the Nazi guy, the two Nazi guys, and Stan. That's not going to burn. No way, Jose. You got to put cardboard in there. You got to put more of those little. That thing will never burn.
Unless there's stuff under it.
Yeah, and use the other. That's my no. Use the other cardboard box. That's my positioning cardboard box for the hose. Just tear it up. Make it in little bits. Okay. Right. Little bits. So anyway, so we leave there after having, Stan gives me a lot of books. Donna gets a lot of Leicas from the Nazis, and we've seen some pretty amazing things because it's 900 miles from anywhere, so they don't even blink twice flying a flying saucer, a gigantic, football-sized triangle, or God, there were, you name it. stuff was going on in that place that you just couldn't friggin' believe. And again, the beauty of the internet. It is all of the stuff I am saying is all over on somebody's blog. And if you, Stan Dale, go find that guy. And if you take him back far enough, you'll see there's like 12 of him. So his story is, you know, he's a dimensional guy. I mean, like I said, he was part of this experiment when he was in the Air Force that did something to him that, you know, there's 12 of them. And he's not, you know, he's like popping in and out. I mean, go check Stan Dale out. You know, just
12 of that person.
Well, he's a dimensional character, you know. And then another William, what was Bill's? He wrote a book called "Behold the Pale Horse," right? And what was Bill's last name? He was a real interesting guy. And Al Bielek and Preston Nichols. And all of these guys, I was tight with, hung out with them, and they're all dimensional characters. They've all been involved in things. And me, I just kind of wanted to be around it. But when it got to the point, well, okay, I step into that box, and no, sorry, no. So, and part of it was none of these guys had girlfriends. So, Stan, though, he has a very nice wife.
Why do they not have girlfriends?
Why don't you have a girlfriend?
I keep trying to get one.
Right. Well, because you're up here all by, meaning the same kind of thing. They isolated themselves in whatever they were doing. You know? And, you know, that's really part of the thing, is guys who their whole life is their job or their career, well, they usually get divorced. You know, their kids hate them, you know? Me,
not that way.
Yeah, it is pretty much. Guys who their whole life is their career, yes. You know,
but I'm nice.
Yeah, but your whole life isn't your career.
Why is it making that sound?
Oh, because it's burning pretty good.
It sounds like the Aboriginal stuff.
Yeah, it is. No,
like
it's sucking air through the ports. That's why it's making that sound. And you got to go get some wood upstairs. You need smaller wood. You can't just put cardboard in there. You know, you need to build some embers, and that's why I'm not worrying about it. I'm just thinking warm thoughts.
What about the Aborigines?
Okay, we're getting back there. So we go from Alice Springs to Ayers Rock. Now, Ayers Rock is a rock, not a mountain, not a geologic formation, but a rock, like you find on the ground, a rock, the size of Manhattan. A rock the size of Manhattan, right? And it is 3,200 feet tall, and it's got kind of cliff. I mean, it's a rock, so it's got these kind of cliffs all around it. And because it's a rock, you can't climb it like Europeans climb mountains, meaning there aren't little crevices that you can put pylons or knock things into. Trying to knock something into it, it's a rock. It'll break off, so you can't climb it. So for the first 60, 80 years of white guys hanging out there, they try and climb it, and they can't. One day, there's a farmer, a rancher, who's riding by on his horse, and he sees a bunch of Aborigines guys on top of Ayers Rock. So he stops. He gets off his horse. He waits, and they come down, and they come out from around the side. And he goes, how do you guys get up there? We've tried and we can't. And they go, there's a path. And he goes, wait right here. And he runs back home, and he brings a big pot of white paint. And he goes, show me. And they show him, and he puts a white dotted line up the side of the cliff. Bing, 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 right?
We should do some reenactments.
I just did. Bing, 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 bing.
We should do a reenactment, have it going on with actors as you're telling the story.
Well, maybe someday.
If you want to do some avant-garde.
Yeah, someday. Anyway, so
I could do that.
So this rock has its own gravitational field, right? So we go to Ayers Rock, and it's this rock out in the middle of nowhere, 600 miles in any direction to anybody, but there's a motel, a restaurant, and the bus stops there. Everyone gets off and spends a day or two. right? We all have our motel room, and and what was a real lesson to me was getting on this bus. The only people who went on this bus were people who were going from point A to point B, me and my wife and old folk, all us old Australian guys who just got their retirement and this is what they're going to do. And they all have oxygen up their nose and they're all half dead and they can't enjoy anything. You know, they don't walk up the side of the Ayers Rock. Anyway, so, you know, the movie, oh, where the Australian woman, the police blame her for killing her baby, and she says, "A dingo ate." No, the cops say first, "Dingo ate the baby," and then the forensic guy goes, "Oh no, dingo ate. Somebody murdered this baby," and so they blame the husband and wife. Well, that happened at Ayers Rock, and that was done by the Secret Service of the Australian government because the dingo is the spirit guide to the Aboriginals people. If you go back and look at one of um, the YouTubes, I show a picture of me with a bunch of Aborigines, and there's this little dog chewing at my shoe. That was my dingo. I was given that dingo, and that dog was there to bring me into dream time. You know, to like carry me, you know, into spirit time. And the Australian government knew this, so they wanted to get rid of all dingoes because they wanted to kill. They couldn't, no matter how they shot the Aborigines people in the head and got them, you know, addicted to alcohol and drugs. They couldn't kill that Aboriginal spirit, and they felt if they killed the dogs that they would. That was like the connecting rod. Anyway, so we get there, and we are there weeks after. What is this little thing saying? Battery dying?
20% battery.
Okay.
I'll have to charge. I'll have to plug it in.
Okay.
I'll go plug it in.
Okay.
I'll do the wood later.
Right, right. So anyway, I was, so we get to Ayers Rock. And when we get there, that thing with the police were still doing their forensic shit. The thing had happened a couple of weeks before we got there. So, you know, my wife and I were right there at the moment of seeing that thing. It was like really bizarre. That woman who always wins the Academy Award played that part. Anyway, so we're there, and it's very strange because all of these, you know, we just come from Alice Springs, which is really strange, Pine Gap, and now we're at Ayers Rock, and all of these, you know, forensic people are there, and legal people are there, and police people are there, and here are all these old people, and we're all staying in the motel, and so we go off to see Ayers Rock, and they have all of these caves, and all of the caves, they're not like stalactites. It looks like somebody bored it out with a laser beam. They're smooth, right? And so we go into this one, and the bottom of the cave, all the caves are like sand, right? Because the water comes in, it washes in there, and it brings sand and washes out. And there is a cave painting. And the guy says, and see, here is an Aboriginal cave painting. Well, you know, I'm an artist. I kind of know what it is, and it was obvious that this moron yesterday started a fire because the fire pit's still there, and the pieces of wood with the charcoal still there, and the charcoal on the wall, you go like this, you can like take it off, right? So I'm looking at it going, oh, this is. So the big crowd of people saunter out, and I sit down and I start meditating in front of that drawing. And so I'm watching it, I'm meditating, and I don't know if you've ever done a flip drawing. I think, shouldn't your cord, the long cord should fit over to that a plug strip over there, buddy.
All right. Well, I got the iPhone plugged in.
Okay. But anyway, I'm sitting there and I'm watching, and you know when you have flip things, you have one little drawing, another little drawing, and then you put them in and flip it, it's a moving picture, right? Well, I'm sitting in front of this cave painting, and it starts moving because the Aborigines did that over periods of times, and all on the wall there were drawings that were moving. You know, there was cave painting over here, and they're all like moving pictures. Now the guy back in Adelaide said, "Oh, these Aborigines are so, um, you know, unplug the fan and hit the switch, and this will work."
Yeah.
You know.
That is amazing. And you didn't take any drugs or anything?
No, no drugs. I just saw it. All I was doing was meditating. You know, as I told you
And
before.
the cave paintings moved?
Yeah, movies, moving.
In caves
They were
or on
movies.
walls?
They were on the walls. The movies. They were drawings, and they were like, you know, flicking, and I'd see people being
Wow.
born, and
And so you met the Aborigines at this point?
yes, in the cave. I was
You
watching
just
their
met-
paintings. I was watching their paintings.
So okay.
So I'm there watching it, and they're up on the wall, right? And I'm watching them, and I'm thinking about the moron who told me how the Aborigines are like children. No, these people are like so much more advanced than we are. It's unbelievable. Think, did you hit the
Yes,
switch?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You want oh.
It just the plug. Yep, exactly. Yep.
When did you? So you just met the Aborigines at this point?
Right. No, I saw them on the wall. I haven't physically met them.
You still haven't met them, but you got to the place where the Aborigine.
But they've already been contacting me through Dreamtime. You know, this is more a physical representation of my dreams. I'm watching this stuff.
When you cried on the airplane and
Yes,
tears
yeah,
went
that's
your,
yes.
Your wife's
Yes,
face when
yes.
you were sitting in your lap.
Yes,
in your
yeah,
lap when you-
and it happened even before I left America. Meaning I was having dreams. When I met Neil, I had dreams about the Aborigines.
Did you kind of know you were going to meet them?
No idea.
Or did you
No,
plan
no, no,
on
no,
it, or
no,
you
no,
were
no,
just
no,
going to
no, no, no.
Australia?
Just what? Yep, just.
Wait for
Yep,
vacation.
yep, exactly. I was only going to be there.
Vacation?
Yeah, vacation.
Okay.
Vacation.
Okay, okay.
I mean, I was only going to be there a couple months. I ended up there 3 years. Anyway, so so Ayers Rock was freaking amazing. The other thing is that we walked up the side of the freaking mountain, Ayers Rock, boom, 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 up the cliff. And they drilled these pipes in there and glued them in there and had a chain so you could, but you didn't have to hold on to the chain. You didn't have to pull yourself up the mountain. You could just walk up. Boop, 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 boop. And there was this girl in disco clothes with high heels who freaking walked up the hill. It was like, anyway, so we spent a few days there. And so between the police that were there investigating the murder of that movie, of The Dingo Killed My Baby, and Ayers Rock and walking up the side, and the movies in the caves. This was getting weirder and weirder. So we get on the bus, and now we're heading towards the Northern Territory. And we stop off at a little place where you could get stuff, and I buy bottles of water, and I buy fruit. I know we're going to, once that bus leaves us off, these other places were towns, bus came, where they're going to leave us off, there's going to be no bus coming picking us up, period. So, the bus is like, going across, and the day before, the morning of where they go to drop us off, I wake up and I hear this thudding sound, and there was in front of the bus this, what is known, they put them on in front of trains called cow catchers. It's like a snowplow, so if there's a cow on the thing, train hits it, it bounces off. Well, the bus had the same thing for kangaroos, because we were going through this, I don't even know what to call it, but 100 miles of nothingness, outback, and the basic thing, I hear this thudding, and we're going through miles of hopping kangaroos, and we're just killing hundreds of them, and he doesn't slow down. He just plows right through them, and we must have plowed through 20 miles of kangaroos, and just killing them left, right, and center, and
What were you driving?
I wasn't driving anything.
Well, no,
I was in a big, gigantic,
What was the guy driving?
a Greyhound bus.
Really?
Yeah. And it was just like Mad Max. All those vehicles you see in Mad Max, it was just like that. It was like this Greyhound bus.
It had that thing in the front.
Right, the thing in the front. And it had all kinds of things over the windshield, so if anything popped up, it wouldn't go through. Anyway, I'm behind a guy. I go, aren't we going to stop? He goes, no, we'd be here forever. We're just plowing right through this. So we plow right through it.
Yeah,
And,
it's terrible.
and he's going to leave us off at this place called Christmas Creek. And he slows down, and the road dips down into what looks like a creek, but it's drier than dry. And I know, I've been studying, there's things out here that if they bite you, you're dead. And like there were in Melbourne. Every toilet in Melbourne had a sign on it say, "Check the toilet before you sit down," because there was this little spider that loved hanging out on the porcelain, and if it bit you on the ass, you were dead in 3 minutes. If they didn't get that EpiPen in you in 3 minutes, you were dead. It's called a redback spider. And that was in the city of Melbourne. Out there in the middle of nowhere, outback, they had shit that would kill you like that. And the flies and mosquitoes were unfriggin' believable. They were all over. I don't know if you've ever seen movies like Crocodile Dundee has a hat with corks. It's to keep the flies away, you know? Anyway, but if you don't want the bugs to bite you, you don't eat the cheeseburger or the chocolate bar or drink the Coke. You just eat what's there. So anyway, one of the last.
So you.
Yes, I started.
Did you meet the Aborigines yet?
No, but we're going to meet the Aborigines, the day of meeting the Aborigines. But the Nazi guys told us, well, you're going to go out there, you're going to have to change your diet. And they gave us the 411 so we stopped eating the crappy food in these bus stop things. And when we were at Ayers Rock, we just ate vegetables and fruit and drank water. We didn't drink pop. And so, anyway,
So
we're just about to meet them.
this is when you were just eating the fruits and vegetables so
Right,
far.
and drinking water.
Genuinely.
Right. So we
Okay.
wouldn't have sugar in our body.
Okay. 'Cause
We weren't drinking sodas or eating, like everybody else, potato chips. We were trying to eat something that wouldn't attract, these things that would kill us. So anyway, we stop, the bus lets us off, throws our bags out the ground, and now there's nobody coming back, period. So we're out there in the middle, 900 miles in any direction, nobody, right? And that's when I kind of go, we could be fucked here. This might not be good. And so there's nobody there to meet us, right? But as the bus pulled into Christmas Creek, we passed a garbage pit.
Christmas Creek.
That's what it was called.
I've been thinking about Christmas like today and last night. Why does that run through my mind?
I have no idea. But anyway, to an anthropologist, if you want to know the 411 of wherever you are, you go look at the garbage pit, right? So there's nothing there. There's nobody meeting us. There's no road, no nothing. Just a dirt and a little indentation where was a creek. Anyway, and there's some kind of trees there that have some kind of leaves on them. And so there's some kind of shade from the just microwave sun that's there. So I pile up our bags, which is very few bags, and sit down on top of them and give her the bottles of water and say, honey, I'm going to run up to where I saw a garbage pit, and I'm going to go check that out. So and you stay here, try not to get bitten by anything, I'll be right back. And so I run, and I go down this little crevasse and go there, and I find 2 Aborigines old guys, right? And they're surrounded by like hundreds of beer cans. And they are drunker than I've ever seen any human being drunk. Their eyes are bloodshot like you can't believe. And they're slapping each other around, and they're laughing, and they're pushing each other and wrestling and just having a grand old time. And they kind of look up. And they look at me, and they're drunk out of their minds. And they should not know who the fuck I am, but they say to me, well, Al, how did you like your first night in Australia? And those were the guys, when I was sitting on that park bench in Sydney, invited me to step inside the fire. And so they got up, they dusted themselves off, and they said, so...
They didn't
Excuse me?
In your dream, they invited you, or
I told
you
you.
were lost for 72 hours.
Right, exactly. And
And you
in
thought it.
and in that dream, it was only a few seconds, or a minute or 5 minutes or no long. It wasn't 72 hours. Meaning, I kind of realized I was in outer space. I saw all these sparks. They invited me to step in the fire. I went in there. I heard the music of ant and turtle, and we danced. And then all of a sudden, I'm being shaken awake by a policeman. Here, these guys should have not even known who the heck I was. And they said, "Well, Al, how'd you like your first night in Australia?" And I was like,
They were the first Aborigines you finally got to see.
"Yep,
And this is where the Aborigine story stuff happened. Like, you're going to tell us about their culture. And
yeah,
how
yeah." But
interesting
I
it is.
had been exposed for the last year and a half to these guys in my dreams, dream time. That's why this thing's called Dream Time with Al. Anyway, so we go get Donna. They walk us back where the rest of the clan is, and it's not too far. And we really
I
have.
actually called it Dream Time with Al, not knowing the
I
importance
told you
of
to
it.
call it Dream Time with Al.
You mentioned it, but you didn't say calling the whole series that.
Yes, I did, but we neither here nor there. Anyway, so basically, I didn't order John. I just kept saying Dream Time with Al, Dream Time with Al, Dream Time with Al.
Or you kept saying Dream Time.
Right.
You didn't say with Al.
All right. Anyway,
But you're Al.
I'm Al.
Dream
Yeah,
Time.
right. So anyway, neither here nor there. So we walk back to the clan, and it's another garbage pit, and there's stuff all around it, and they don't have, they just sleep on the ground. They have no, they don't wear shoes. They got jeans. They got shirts. That's about it.
How did they not get sunburned?
They're blacker than black. So, and they had hats. Everybody had a hat. So,
But they didn't get sunburned?
No.
Some blacks
no,
black people do.
not these guys. These guys they're indigenous people. This is they come from this place. So anyway, so they're glad to see us. They knew we were coming, but no one told them. They just knew. So there is 5 old guys, 6 old girls, 1 woman who is Leslie's brother's wife, and a baby. And the baby is Sonny Jim. And the baby is Jesus Christ. And the baby was kind of born, didn't take 9 months. The baby was just there. And the baby, within a month of being born, went from baby to baby, right? And could walk around, right?
And you can see a picture of that baby, a real picture in his other video. I believe it's called A Spiritual Reading with Owl Bob.
Right. And you see the kid had a halo around him. He could bring animals back to life, but within a corroboree, which is a ceremony. And that was one of my jobs, was to identify these things and put them on a top map so the government could say, "Oh, we're really taking good care of the Aborigines. We have respect of their spirituality. We have made their, well, the freaking whole valley is the spiritual site, not a little thing the size of a phone booth." Anyway, so we get there, and right away we say, they have some canned this and crappy that. And we say, no, we realize we should be eating like you guys. So this place where I told you the water was, there were tubers.
Whoa, this is interesting,
And,
this part.
and so, and basically they ate, things that they picked, and hunt, and they were gatherers. And there was this one thing that they had that I loved, and they would give it to me on this piece of bark, and it was like, just envision the pork rinds that you would eat in a bag, right, that aren't really good for you, covered in chocolate with sugared sprinkles on top. Just think of that, right? Pork rinds with chocolate and sprinkles. Really yummy, right? And I couldn't get enough of this stuff. I just, and the more they could, and that was my basic thing. You know, morning, night, you got that shit? Here, I'll eat more of it. Anyway, I
But it
kept,
was their special Aborigine recipe,
no, no, I'll tell you what it
or it was
was.
the junk American food.
No, no, you just listen. So I kept saying, "What is this? This is great. You got to tell me what it is." Just like you said, special. Did you? Where you don't have a kitchen? How'd you fry this shit up? Anyway, they said, just eat it. You don't want to know. And I just bugged them so much that one day they said, "Okay, you want to know what this shit is? Here, come." So we walked over to a tree. They pulled the bark off, and there were these larvae, right? And then they would hit it with a rock, squish them all up, and they would squirt out their blood. And then they'd poop before they died. So the pork rinds were the larvae, the chocolate was their blood, and the sprinkles was their poop. And after that, I couldn't eat that ever again. So from that point on, every time they gave me something to eat, which pretty much I always said, this is not bad, I never would ask them what it was. Never, ever, ever. Because there was no supermarket, there was a limited stuff. So that was it. So the moron guy from Adelaide, Perth, said to me, "Oh, they'll never let you take their picture, right? Oh, and they're really stupid and they don't have a written language, right?" Anyway, when I was there, Polaroid had just come out, or was coming out, with the SX70. That was the very Star Trek camera that was thin, and you pulled it apart, and it was a reflex camera, and you put in the pack of film, and you take the picture and go, oop, and then it would appear right in front of you. You didn't have to do anything to it like the other Polaroids you had to. So I was given 6 of those and like 100 or so packs of film. So I gave one each. I gave 5 of them away to the whole tribe. I showed them how to put the film in and shoot it, and then said, "Go have a good time. Go take pictures." And they take pictures of like dirt and their finger, and I didn't go, "Oh no, don't do that." I just let them do whatever the heck they wanted. They thought it was the best thing. And from that point on, they let me take pictures of anything. And one day I was talking to one of the old guys. I said, "The moron back in the home office said to me that you never let me take you a picture of anything. And you let me take pictures of everything." And they said, "Well, you're our friend. We knew you were coming. We expected you. And look, you gave us these magic cameras and let us do whatever the heck. Of course we're going to let you take pictures of anything. We love you. We trust you. Not a problem." And they actually had a written language. There's a tree called iron tree in the outback out there, and it's relatively straight. And every year they cut one of these trees down, they cut it off the ground, they cut it off when it starts going out like this, and they slice it into 4 bits, and they put pictures, petroglyphs of, pictograms of what happened in that quarter of the year, who was born, who died, what the flood did, blah, blah, blah. And then they had a cave that had thousands of these bundles. And they pulled them out and let me photograph them. I was given a Bolex 16 millimeter camera. They let me film everything. And when white people would come through, they had been told that we were out there with these guys and asked, because I had all these packets of film to send back to the home office. And so I would, right? And I had a changing bag so I could take the film out and put it in these canisters, and then in these lead bags, and then in these other bags, and then seal them up so the dust and dirt wouldn't get in, and they'd get sent back to the home office. So I was taking photos and films. And Donna, she kept her stuff. My stuff was for the home office, and I kept the Polaroids. And so the pictures got back to the home office, and so one of my things was to go find these sacred sites, right? So I would go walk about with these old guys, right? And I'd have my little pack and my little canteen and my little film camera and stuff and my umbrella, and we would march off, and they would show me things. And there were these, we'd be out in the middle of a desert and there'd be a tree and there'd be a car up there. And it would say flood of 52, and there'd be another car up in another tree, flood of 63. And it's a desert. I go, well, these floods, what's the story with these floods? And they said, well, we have these monsoons. They kind of come right through here and the water is high and if it's anything around, it kind of floats it up there. Anyway, so I go, oh, that's kind of, but that was interesting, but it's still, to me, a desert. Yes, they showed us there was water everywhere in these canyons, but, it's still that. So one day we're walking across this valley, and this old guy, he's got to be somewhere between 70 and 100 million, and he goes, Al, you think you can get up on top of that mountain, which is like 6 miles away, and then up a mountain, in the next 20 minutes? And I go, what are you talking about? There's like not a cloud in the sky. It's a beautiful day. I got my umbrella. I got my pack. I got my everything. And he goes, and we start, and I go, what is this, a test? Because he would do things, and I say, is this a test? And he goes, listen, we can either start running as fast as we can right now for the top of that mountain, or we'll be dead.
Oh, this is interesting.
You got a choice. And I go, okay. So I, take the umbrella, I put everything, and we both start running. Now this guy's I'm like 27, and he is like way ahead of me. And I am running,
How old is he?
God knows. Like I said, somewhere between 70 and 80 million years old. I mean, this guy is old. And but he is like taking off. And he keeps stopping and turning around and yelling at me, don't stop, don't turn back, don't look back, just run. So I get...
in a valley?
We're in a valley. And we get to the end, and he's still screaming at me, run, and we're going up this, and I get up the top, and I'm nearly dead, meaning I'm burnt to a crisp, I'm dehydrated.
American that ate all this American food for
my whole life. No, but I'm in pretty good shape. I'm in part of almost my best shape of my life because I haven't really eaten anything. I've been there already a couple months. I'm in pretty good shape. I'm eating their food. I'm in pretty good shape. Anyway, and I've been walking with this guy all over the place. Anyway, we get on top of the mountain, and I'm looking this way, and it's still blue sky. The sun is still on me, and he goes, turn around. And I turn around, and on the other mountain ridge, it is all black and yellow and lightning bolts. And where we were is a wall of water going across the valley, and it's about 20 feet high. So we were
20 feet high, and it's just
going
through the whole valley.
You got it. Just a wall of water going across.
And it did that periodically?
Yes. I mean,
what was that phenomenon from?
Because Australia is an island out in the middle Pacific. They have these things called cyclones, which are hurricanes and tornadoes, and so that it stays dry, and then this thing comes across. And that's why there's water out there, because this big wall of water fills those crevasses up, And when you're driving on
when you walked up the mountain, you went up to the top of the
I ran up the friggin' mountain because he kept screaming at me. Well, it was about 1,200 feet high, about the size of this, meaning,
or further down.
If you were, it's as high as what Bent Mountain is, and if you had a cliff, like a thing like this, So I ran up, maybe a 30 degree. And he'd be way ahead of me. He'd say, don't look back, keep running, run. And, when I got at the top, I'm like next to dead. And he goes, turn around. And this wall, where we were standing, a wall of water was just kind of, but when I was going,
is this like a skinny Aborigine?
Oh, they're all skinny.
Skinny
except the woman. Yes, they're all skinny because they don't eat anything.
You were like a fat white guy?
I wasn't fat. I was 160 pounds, I was 5.
You were?
Yes, I was
You were,
5,
like, in
11 and
shape? Were you athletic?
yeah,
Wow.
I was in great shape.
So you didn't have anything wrong.
No, I had nothing wrong. I'm not like, I was 27 years old. I had been working as an electrician. I'd been carrying 70 pounds of tools on my shoulder for the last 18 years, you know?
Wow.
So I was in pretty good shape. And then I've been standing 3 months with these guys walking.
Either one of those, any of those would have been okay.
Huh?
A skinny Aborigine might be like in shape. And,
They're all in shape because they don't
They
eat.
were?
They don't eat crap, and they walk everywhere, and they walk miles. So they walk
Did they
about.
wear shoes?
No shoes.
No shoes?
Their feet are like boots.
Like the calluses under them?
Yeah. Yeah.
How about around them?
Yeah. Their whole foot is like a boot. They got
Good.
big feet.
Good gosh.
Yep, yep. And
How tall were they?
not too tall, 5'2". They were all
weren't
short.
Tall.
They were all short.
Were the women shorter than the men?
No, actually, the women were taller than men, and
Wow.
and the women were a little because they had babies. The women had a little more meat to them.
Do they still exist out there
Yeah.
in their native form?
No,
Or
well,
are they
they're
Americanized?
dwindling because the population
I
of
know,
Australia
that's
is bigger. The mining is more intense. There is a great film called The Last Wave, which really kind of goes into it. And you guys could, and that was the last wave, you know, the wave I was experienced on top of the mountain.
What
And-
else was interesting? How many days did you spend
With those guys, almost 7 months, 6 months,
Oh my gosh! Did you turn 28 during that time?
could have.
Um,
Or I
what
turned 28
else did
before I showed up there.
Did they have names?
Of course they had names.
Do you
Yeah.
not want to say them here? Or?
Well, my memory is not the best. I know one was Dave. You know, virtually every indigenous elder who was my teacher was a Dave. David, not Dave, David. And there's a big difference between Daves and Davids. So, anyway, you know,
Did they have younger, older people? They had
the
babies,
youngest was
young,
Sonny Jim's
old?
mom, and she was pushing 40.
The youngest?
Yeah, she had.
Besides the baby.
Yeah, besides the baby, the mother of the baby,
How many were in the tribe that you stayed with?
9,
9?
give or take. Yeah.
Did they have ceremonies? And
Boy,
stuff
did they
like-
ever! Yes.
Oh my
Everything
God.
they did was every ounce of their existence was ceremony. So I'll tell you about so one of my gigs was to find their sacred sites where they're corroboree, right? Which is a ceremony, but the white guys thought the corroboree was like a church, you know, but it's a ceremony. So we walked out, and we'd be like out in the middle of nowhere, you know, no real, you know, landmark, no big tree over there and a rock over here. It was just like kind of stuff, you know. And we'd be walking, and the guy would say, okay, this is a spot. And he'd get on his knees, and he'd start digging in the ground. And he'd dig down a foot or so. It was sandish, you know, and he'd just kind of push the dirt around. And every sacred site, he would pull up a red Samsonite plastic suitcase. I always thought this would be a great commercial. And he would pick it up, and he'd pull it over, and he'd open it up, and inside would be colored sand, feathers, twigs, branches, string that was made from hair or other sinews. And he would put together these things to represent a fish or a bird or a snake. And then he would make a mask. He would take the different colored sands and he would put it in his hand and he'd urinate on it and turn it into a mud, and he would put it on his face, and then he would put feathers and other things and decorate the mask, and he'd have a pretty amazing mask. And if you go to National Geographics, you will see this, you know. And basically, they take their clothes off. They're either naked or have little, you know, scarfy thing that they make into a diapery kind of thing. And in there will be a branch or something that they will use as a didgeridoo or a kinetic instrument of sorts. And there's another instrument where the sinew comes through there, and there's a piece of bark in between. It has two holes in the sinew, and they have these other two pieces of bark, and they pull it apart, and it makes the piece of wood in the middle, go back as you do this and with the string, um, and it kind of whistles. So didgeridoo, a kind of stick that they hit, and this other thing that um, does that. And they had some of them had rain sticks too, which is again another kind of piece of hollow.
Did they do anything? Oh, was that like the rain stick that the Indians used?
Yeah, yeah,
They
yeah,
turn-
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's an Aborigine thing.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Like they'd turn it and it would make that
Yeah, yeah,
cool
makes
sound.
sense. Yep, yep. Mm-hmm.
Did they? I don't want to insult them if their culture is different, but did they do strange things with their body fluids?
Yeah, I told you that he urinated on the dirt and he made mud out of it and made a mask out of it. That's called body fluid, his urine. Because there's no water out there, right? So he takes his urine and he turns the dirt into mud and he makes a mask. And like I said, if you go into National Geographics and see pictures, especially from the 20s and 30s of the Aborigines people, they all got these masks on. So anyway.
What did they do with their other bodily fluids?
They didn't do anything with them.
They didn't do anything with other stuff.
No,
They didn't
no.
put feces on their.
No,
on their,
no.
They
No.
didn't put feces
No,
on their hands.
no, no, no,
They
no.
didn't put feces. They didn't.
No,
like, put feces
no,
in.
no, no, no.
Yeah.
Yeah,
or
no,
something. No, didn't do-
no,
okay.
no.
Just wondering.
Just used urine because, they didn't have a canteen. Anyway, so the interesting thing, though, so they start doing the ceremony, right? And that thing
That's not that.
that thing they made out of the fish or the bird or the snake that they made out of the twigs and the sinew, it would turn into a living snake or a fish or a bird. And I had my little Bolex 16 millimeter camera, and I would film these corroborees. Right? He would say, okay, we're getting close. I would start filming. He'd just walk along the ground. He'd get on his knees. He'd find the red Samsonite freaking suitcase, pull it open, find the stuff inside, make a mask, make the animal, and then start doing ceremony. And nothing else. No, he would say things. He would make music, with the instruments that he had in the suitcase, and do the ceremony. And it would represent an energy of the animal totem, and it would represent that area and what it meant and to the bigger picture. So I photographed and filmed all of these and sent it all back to the home office.
But that's good that they didn't do too strange things with bodily fluids or something gross. They just used that one urine thing and the thing they put on their face.
But the really interesting thing, let alone bodily fluids, was that they turned inanimate objects into living things.
What do you mean? You just told that.
Yes, I just told that.
But I didn't know that you were really saying that.
Yes, I was really saying that.
But
It wasn't a
you
representation,
mean they
kids.
put them together with things?
Yes,
and
it would be
make them
twigs, and they tied together with sinew, and then they would do ceremony, and that twig would turn into a snake or a bird or a fish.
But
And we weren't smoking anything. We weren't eating anything. It would happen, and I filmed it, right? So I sent
you
the
had that in you had all those documentary films, and your dad.
no. All of those documentary
Do you still
films
have
went back to the home office.
Oh, okay.
Now, the Polaroids was a different story. My father threw a good deal of my photographs away. But that's a whole nother story.
That's not that bad.
Oh.
Comparatively. To film one of those things with a snake coming to life or whatever it was.
I had Polaroids of it.
Oh, but
and my father threw them away. And I had Polaroids of the 60s and 70s of the art world. I mean, I could have retired on the stuff that I had from the Fillmore East. Anyway, but that's another story. I digress.
That happens often with people's baseball card collections or something that would be worth like hundreds of thousands of dollars and stuff.
Anyway, that's another story. I'll tell you another day. But the real interesting thing was
You got along with your dad,
relatively.
Yeah. Okay.
Relatively. That's when, taking care of my father for the last 20, and my mother for the last 28 years of their life is truly where I mastered or came close to mastering the 5 tools of basically humility, patience, empathy, forgiveness, and healing. My parents definitely put me through trials of that. But anyway, we go back. I digress, and we go back to that thing. So I sent all that stuff back to the home office, and one of the days when we were there, they show up. The moron who said, "Oh, these people are children," blah blah blah. Now I've photographed, their library of their written language. I've showed them the sacred sites and the ceremonies, and all of the, where the suitcases were, and I put them on a top mat. So they go off and look for them without acts. They only come to us because they went looking for the sacred sites, and I put them on a top mat, meaning they could find it with, topographical tools, like I did, and they couldn't find it. They dug holes everywhere. They couldn't find it, and they came and said, so the guy goes, how did you, simulate that? How did you lie about this? How did you, because I wanted to know where the library was. And I took them to it, and where it was, I could see it, but these morons couldn't see it. I mean, it's a cave. Look at the cave. It's right there. They were like, where's the cave? I can't find the cave. And I'm like, it's right there. And I had photographs of it. I had photographs of the trees and the marks on them. I'm an anthropologist. I did it the way you're supposed to. And these morons couldn't find it because they were in another dimension. And they're standing right next to us, but they're in another dimension. They're talking to us, but they're in another dimension. So in the films, they had the photographs, they had topographical maps saying where everything was, but they couldn't find anything. And that is why the people of Australia are being barbecued alive by the lack of an ozone over their head, because they live in another dimension, and they think that they can rule over nature's love and beauty. Whereas the Aborigines and all other indigenous people are of that love and beauty. So we spent, close to 6 months. I, love these people. They're part of, they let me photograph everything. Donna she has a lot of great photos. I don't know if she's ever shown them, because when she and I split up, it's kind of when she started who she wanted to be, how she portrayed herself. Like all the other great famous artists, they build like Andy Warhol. He built this aesthetic and played that role. So, and really, after Don and I split up, we saw each other a few years, but once, 3 years, and once I went in this direction, she went in that direction. Really, we never.
Are you are you allowed to say her whole name if they want to look her up, or that's too much?
Yeah, Donna Ann McAdams, great photographer, world famous. Yeah.
Can I ask, did the Aborigines have a sense of humor?
Oh, they had a great sense. Oh, man.
That you related to.
Oh, here's a great story. So,
did you feel very comfortable at them at a time when
they were my family. They were my family. They were more my family than my parents and my brothers and sisters. We were like, they knew me before I even got on the airplane to come to Australia, right? And anyway, so here's a great story about sense of humor. So Um, so the first I met them, they were in a junkyard, drunk out of their mind, slapping each other around. Right? It was like they were laughing hysterically and slapping each other. They had it, and everything was fun. Nothing was a drudge. They had you're always going on about how, you hated working for your father in your real estate business.
Well,
You can't pay your bills. Blah blah. These
I
people
can
didn't
pay my
have to pay their
bills.
bills. These people never had a bad
I like my
day.
father.
You know, they never had a bad day. You know, they were living out there in the middle of nowhere in a garbage pit. Everyone thought they were drunk losers, and they were the most brilliant, richest people I knew because they had nothing material. Today, I have nothing really of a material sense, meaning,
But
and
you're
I'm
not making
following
that an
there.
attack on people that make
No,
monetary
no, no,
wealth
no. It's
than
just two different
things.
worlds. It's just two different worlds. And what's really amazing about, these were I mean, I have been exposed to the five tools of humility, patience, empathy, forgiveness, and healing a good deal. But these people lived it like Jesus Christ. And the little baby was friggin' Jesus Christ, you know? And he died just like Jesus Christ. When he was 17, he was a spiritual leader that was going to change Australia. And of course, he got shot in the head by the secret police. So, again, do not believe anything I say. Zip. All of this is a story, but you can go put the dots together yourself. There's enough information on the internet and books. Like I said, go see that movie, The Last Wave. A woman wrote a book called The Mutant Message Down Under, or something close to that, which is almost verbatim story of what I'm telling you. And there are other people who have this same story. I'm not the only guy, and neither is she. There are a lot of other people who have written books about this and told it. And, a good book. Did you ever read any of Don Juan's books? You know, um, those are talk about the same thing. And anyway, how long has this been running? 10 hours?
It
Any,
says
anyway,
157 and 22
oh, that's not
seconds.
too bad.
What does that mean? But
1 hour, 57
no, it
minutes, and
says it a different way. It just says 157
right,
and then 30
right.
seconds.
That's what it is. 1 hour, 57 minutes. Not too bad.
Oh, 157 minutes.
Okay, maybe that's what it is. Anyway, so that's the Aborigine story. We came back on the bus and went back into other. We stayed another year and a bit, and we experienced Australia under martial law. You know, and it was really interesting because petty laws they didn't care about. It was just political laws that they really went after people big time. But if you kept, it's like I went to Baghdad when I was living in Sweden, getting on the airplane and taking the Swedish tourism trip, and we would get, um, things from the Swedish government saying that we were, I forget the word for it, but when you go to, you get but anyway, they thought we were Swedish, not Americans, and it was in the early 70s to the point that, America was their ally, but Saddam was in charge, and it was a police state. But we walked around; it was nice. I mean, Iraq was a pretty place, and the cities were great. And they had a lot of money, and everyone went to school and were doctors, lawyers, and Indian chiefs, and there was no crime, and you could walk the streets at 3 in the morning. No one bothered you. You could go from one place to the other, not a big deal. But when we brought them democracy, ooh, baby, things got pretty wild. So it's not the world that you think that's being advertised. What you have to do is really see the world like the Aborigines do. So here's the last story of the Aborigines. So we would walk about, just not me and the older guys, and the whole tribe. They'd pick out an area that they like went through all the grubs and fruits and things growing, you know, um, by the side of the stream. So we would move on to another spot, and so we went. We were walking, and if we could walk through these ravines that had rivers in them and beaches, which were nice and cool on your feet, not the hot friggin'. These guys were barefoot, and I was wearing army boots, and it was still pretty hot. Anyway, we went down walking on one of these things, and we came to a place that was beautiful. Big beach, big outcropping, and there was a metal plate on the side of the outcropping with a chain attached to it, went down into the water. And this piece of water wasn't like a thin stream, it was like a pretty wide, almost a lake or a pond. Um, and so, we went there and we kind of dropped our stuff and everyone jumped in the water, and it was the top 3 feet was like a jacuzzi, warmer than warm. But if you dove down, it got cold, cold, really cold. If you went 10 feet or below, it was 30, it was like really cold. So the water was coming from someplace and moving quickly down there, and it was really cold. It was like refrigerator cold. So anyway, we refreshed ourselves, and by the time, I've gotten out of the water, some of the folks have already started picking things along the side, and they're all kinds of things. They're like things that are like carrots, things that are like pickles, things that are like fruit, and they've got them, and they've got them on a little rag for noshing on, and they've already found trees up above the outcrop that have bark with grubs on them, and they've already started going through them. But when I come up and everyone is like got little appetizers, they pull this chain. The whole crew is pulling on this big, it's like a chain that you would see on a gigantic ship as a chain for an anchor. And they're pulling this chain, and it's pretty heavy, and it's got some resistance. We're all pulling, pulling. And then this big net, like cargo net, comes up, and inside the cargo net is like a half of a cow that has been freeze-dried and shrink-wrapped. I don't know how that happened, because that takes some serious technology to do, but it's, there. And a box and 4 kegs of beer. So we pull the whole thing up on the beach, open up the net, and pull out the kegs and the box.
I
And
don't understand. Is this on the beach in Australia?
yeah,
And this
out in the middle of the desert.
showed up in the middle of nowhere at the beach.
No, it didn't show up. We went down, and it's not on the beach like the ocean. It's out in the middle of the desert, 600 miles, 900 miles from anything, out in the middle of the desert. And it's like the Grand Canyon, but narrow. Right?
What do you mean it's like the Grand Canyon? In the middle of the desert?
Yeah. And it runs hundreds of miles, and there are bunches of them. And that's why you look at it this way, it looks like a desert. But every quarter mile, 3 mile, 5 mile, there's one of these things that goes all over the place. And when this big wave comes, it fills up with water. So there's tons of water in Australia. Tons.
Oh.
And there's lots of it underground, like big time. Anyway, and these morons are fracking there, destroying it. Meaning, if we ever ran out of water, forget about melting the ice caps. There's a ton of it there in Australia, and they don't even talk about that. Anyway, and they call it a desert, but no. So anyway, we're down, and the beach is, so there's this, thing, but it's not miles wide. It's like, football field wide, 100 yards wide, 10 feet wide. And there's a path along the river, and it's like a beach. And there's an outcropping of the stone over it, so you're not getting barbecued from the sun. So there's this place where there's a big beach and there's a big pond, and someone has attached a metal plate to the side of the cliff there, and there's this gigantic chain going down into the water, and the whole crew drags it out of the water, and in it is a gigantic shipping net, cargo net, and in that is this freeze-dried, vacuum-packed half of a cow, a box, metal box that's like sealed, and four or three or a bunch of kegs of beer, right? Big, like you find at a bar.
It just appeared?
In the water. We dragged it out of the water.
Oh, you mean like when all the water came through, it just came through from somewhere else, like a city or something?
Somebody put this here because it was attached to the side of the wall with a chain.
Oh.
And we all dragged the chain out of the water. So it was way down there in the cold, cold water. So the kegs of beer were cold, cold, cold. The cow was cold, 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 but it was freeze dried and vacuum sealed. So we open up the box, and there is that tap thing for the beer that you put in there, and then you pump it up, and then the beer comes out, right? And there's a big, hacksaw to cut the cow up. So we cut the cow up, we start a big fire. It's like Fred Flintstone. I mean, I never had a rib of a whole half of a cow. It's like Fred Flintstone, big rib. And it's the best steak I ever had in my friggin' life. And there are all of these vegetable things that were on the side, and they boil them up and make a kind of a soup that's like unbelievable. And the coldest, greatest beer there was. And in the box were plastic mugs. We all had plastic mugs. So there we are, the 12 or 15 of us drinking really cold beer, eating the best steak and vegetables, and getting progressively smashed, really drunk. Now, I don't really drink, so I was having a beer. It was like really hot out, and the beer was really cold, and it was pretty good beer. And so I had 2 or 3, but everyone else was have 10, 15. And Donna, she's Irish, 100%. So she was partaking. So they were smashed out of their gourds. And they started slapping each other, hitting each other, wrestling. And it was like if you ever saw Blazing Saddles. And the last scene where they have the bar fight, it was like that. And they're hitting each other pretty well, but they've done this so long, they're not hurting each other. And then I turn around, and one of these guys, who's like my bud, meaning I've been walking around with this guy, and we're doing ceremony and all kinds of things together, and he hits me wango. And I saw stars, and I went down, and I went unconscious, and I woke up, and that little guy was like not on top of me, but above me, and my wife was, everybody was like around me, and I woke up to his tears, because he was so upset that he hit me. And he goes, "Why didn't you move?" Because I wasn't drunk like he was. I wasn't in the timing that they were all in. Even my wife was taking part of this, and she didn't get slugged. I was the only one that had a shiner. I had a real black eye and, a chunk of steak over it. But anyway, but that was their good time. They would get shit-faced drunk and go into a whole nother dimension, and they would wrestle and fight and do all kinds of crazy shit, but they were in perfect timing with each other, and that's what they were experiencing. Because I wasn't as drunk as they were, I was not experiencing that. And when you go back and read the Greeks and the Romans about Bacchus and about alcohol, and this is what they did. And they had these places that were temples for Bacchus where they would get drunk, but only to a certain point, and they would have that same experience. So kids, if you go read Plato, he's the man to read on everything, but about being drunk. And he will describe in his treatise about Bacchus exactly what these Aborigines guys were experiencing. So, hey, Greeks, Aborigines in Australia, experiencing the same thing. Both are indigenous to their place. And then the Greeks kind of watered out their indigenousness by going all over the place and then becoming the Romans. And
How did they, why did they drink the first world people's alcohol as almost a good or ceremonial?
it was a certain thing because that's how they saw it. They didn't do it the way Europeans
Did
do
it
it.
hurt their health?
Well, they didn't see alcohol. If you drink it every day like that, yes, it'll fuck you up and kill you. But if you drink it like that once a year, not so bad.
How often did they drink it?
I was with them 6, 7 months. They drank that. They only drank it that way once. The other time was when they were waiting for me. Only 2 times I saw them drink alcohol.
Good, because that's about the frequency with which I drink alcohol.
Oh yes. So, but they definitely used it in a ceremonial sense. And anyway, so that's my two. But everything was a joy and loads of fun. All we did was laugh and giggle and all the old folks. You know, they were older than dirt and they were having sex all the time. And we were right, and we had no tents, no real privacy. They were doing it all the time. I mean, they didn't do it right in front of you, but it was not a dirty or hidden thing. It was part of what they were. Everything was part of what they were, and that's what indigenous people are, people who belong to that space. So everything in that space is all their relations. They related to everything that was there. That's why they didn't get bit up by bugs. You know, that's why they didn't have the hats like the white guys with corks on them. You know, they had big hats with big brims because they thought it was cool to look like cowboys when they were wearing white people's clothes. I mean, that was what they wanted to look like, not a Mr. Businessman. So, you know, and so what's truly interesting, when I finally came back from Australia, um, Don and I flew back. We flew back in steerage. We went home in first class, and because we got deported by the government of Australia, they said you've been here 3 years. You should have left like 4 months. Your visa that was the word I was looking for. Your visa was only good for X, and you stayed all this time, and so they deported us, but they put us on first class, Air Australia, and we got to LAX, and there was a kind of we went through custom. We landed in Hawaii, went through customs there, and then we flew from Hawaii to LAX, and we didn't have to go through customs. But what was interesting, we stayed a little while in Hawaii, and then we flew to LAX. And when we got on the plane in Hawaii, there were some guys looked like Aborigines, and they were really in first class cowboy gear. I mean, really, super duper cowboy look. And so when we got to LAX,
Were they black?
yeah, they were blacker than coal, blacker than black, blacker than this, you know. They were truly black. These are original guys. Anyway, so and they had cowboy boots and the whole, the really fancy cowboy shirt and cowboy pants and cowboy everything. And when I saw them the first time, they all turned their heads and looked at me and smiled. And I was like, and they were like going that way, and I was going this way. And then I got on an airplane again to go from, and there was, so when we got to LAX, we didn't have any real tickets. And Donna wanted to go to San Francisco to see Yvonne, and I was going to go to New York. And we were kind of going our separate ways, but we still were married for another 2 years. But anyway, I went to New York to basically to land in New York and get things so Donna could just come and everything would be set up for her and she'd be happy and good. She was a little grumpy coming back to America. So she went to San Francisco, and I went to New York. And it was pretty amazing because there was a strike at LAX, and everybody was, and so everything was in chaos. And there were long lines for everything, and you couldn't, half the fights were canceled. And what was truly amazing, Donna just walked in front of like 1,000 people. We got off the thing, and we went down the carousel, and it looked, and she just went straight up to, cut ahead of thousands of people, and went to the lady at the desk and said, I want a ticket to San Francisco, and I want a ticket to New York City. And the woman said, well, she's trying to explain, first of all, that you just cut ahead of like 20, all these people. And B, you can't just get a ticket because we have only so many flights, and so it's like a lottery. So what we do is, push a button and it spins, and you might get a ticket and you might not. But to get 2 tickets going to 2 different places, that's almost impossible. Well, Donna gives her this look like, bitch, you do it or I'm gonna kill you. And so the woman goes, okay, give me your credit card. So she swipes Donna's credit card and pushes the button, and it spits out 2 tickets. And the woman goes, I don't know how that happened, but here are the 2 tickets. Donna turns around, gives me my ticket, gives me a hug and a kiss, and says, I'll see you in a few weeks. So I go, okay. So I get on the airplane, and it's a first-class ticket. I didn't even see where I was, what it was. And I sit up there, and anyway, I get up, take a piss, and I go towards, and in the back part of first class are the 4 Aborigines guys in total cowboy gear. And they look at me and smile, and this one Aborigines guy takes his shirt and does this. And he's got more watches on his arm than I can count. And he points at them and goes, dream time. And I go, okay. So, land in New York. I don't see them. They don't see me. So I haven't been to New York in 3 years. And I go back to my loft in Brooklyn, which I have rented to a guy who's come in from Minnesota. His daddy's got a lot of money. He wants a loft in the artist scene. So he rents my thing, and he pays me a big chunk of change up front. And I say, listen, this loft is in a part of a building that the utility company doesn't even know you exist. You might find a poster on your front door saying they know you and stop stealing. I said, just forget about it. Your utilities are free. There'll be a phone number and they'll say, call us and we'll be nice to you. Don't even call them. Just ignore it. Ignore everyone. Just do your art. Get into the art scene. Have nothing to do with what's going on with the gangs and the Hasids and the this and the that. The neighborhood is in a, there's enough artists here that you won't get murdered, and you're in my place. Everyone knows me, so you'll be fine. Well, I come back, and this.
Why would he even be interested in anything like that other than his art or the thing that he intended to do?
Well, some people are fearful people, and I can't break the law. I don't want to do anything against the law. I never do anything against the law. I don't smoke pot. I don't drink more than 1 beer a year. I don't do anything against the law. Well, that's this guy,
Well, that's what the law is around. Politically, when you're around certain people, that's how they are.
Yeah, but
you go to work for someone else.
No, but see, John, this was a different time. This is the 1970s. This was a neighborhood that was like you were in Zimbabwe, meaning the powers that be did not have a firm grip there. So you could ignore things, Not so much today, but then you could. There was not the kind of over brave, big brother look on everybody. Anyway, neither here nor there. I just rented it to him. He gave me a big chunk of money. I thought he might still be there. I thought somebody else would be there. I go there, and I take a cab there, and I go, hit the bell. Kirby comes down, Yeah, how you doing? I've been going for 3 years. Holy Ghost says, how you been? Where's Donna? Oh, she's still in California. Okay. You know, doesn't even blink. It's like I was there yesterday. So he takes me up. I put a key in the door into the hallway. It works. I go down the hallway. I go to the next key in the door. It still works. Go to my loft, put a key in the door. It still works. The guy is gone. The utilities are still on. It's like it's like I just left yesterday. I open up. I made a big closet. I take my screw gun that I left in the drawer. It's still there. Plug it in. Open it up. Pull my stuff out. I pick up the phone. There's still a phone. There's no cell phones. I dial up a few friends. They're all still around. Oh, you're back. Hey, good. And, I call up a friend of mine. Oh, hey, you want to do some work? I got a job for you. Okay. I call up this woman, a friend of mine named Lucy Lepard, and she started a thing called Printed Matter, and I was a part of that through our thing called Collaborative Artist Projects. Anyway, I called her up because she and I used to do, and a bunch of other people, did a thing called Art on the Beach, and that was a landfill that was in front of the World Trade Centers. And that's now what is known as the Marina, which has all these $1 million condos.
What
But
was that sound?
but jet plane outside. Anyway, today is where all the millionaires live and have their $1 million boats. And of course, when 9/11 happened, nothing happened to that. But back in the day, because New York City, with the oil embargo, that's when New York City went bankrupt. And it just got worse and worse and worse all through the 70s and all through the 80s. And it really didn't turn around until 91, until the dot-com thing started to go. Anyway, so for a good 15 years, that part of New York, there was nothing. That's why we had loft down there. Nothing was going on down there. So we got the city to let us do art in Art on the Beach. So that's what we did. So I called up Lucy. So Lucy, what's going on? She was like the other art party ringleader. So I just got back after being away for 3 years. Oh wow, hey, how you doing? How was it? Oh, good, good. And she goes, so you just got back from Australia, right? And I go, yeah, because you won't believe this. And I go, won't believe what?
What was that sound?
What sound?
Sounded like a distant, big creature, like a beluga whale whining.
No, it was a jet plane. It was a jet plane flying over there. Anyway, so she goes, you won't believe this. And I go, what do you mean I won't believe it? She goes, you sent me that postcard. Because once we got back to Melbourne and Sydney, both places where we had places to stay with friends who were photographers, Donna and I had a darkroom to work in. So Donna was making these big prints. So not to be Donna, I
heard it
made
again.
I,
Oh,
I made postcard shots, and I printed thousands of postcards of all these negatives because postcards are great. It's almost a contact print. I made a little thing so I didn't. All I had to do, bang, postcard, 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 and I didn't really have to worry about the enlarge or anything like that. Anyway, so I had all these postcards. So I sent all these postcards to my friends and everywhere. And so Lucy, I sent her a ton of these postcards. And I sent her a bunch of the Aborigine guys. And so that enthralled her so much that she called up my friend Punch Hawks, who hooked her up with a friend of mine who's Aborigines, whose name
I
was
heard it again. It sounded like a.
I heard nothing, John. How about you, YouTube audience? Did you hear anything? Anyway, so long story short, those guys I heard.
Wait. Woo! I don't know what it was.
Anyway, the guys on the airplane, Lucy brought from Australia to do a corroboree, because I told her a story about the corroboree, and they did it on the beach there. And I have photos of these Aborigines guys, four of them, dressed in with, they did the whole thing with the dirt and the urine and the feathers, and the animals coming to life right in front of the World Trade Centers. And it completed that circle of me having the dream at Flight 007 because, so there the guy with the watches were, and he kind of, after he did the ceremony and everybody clapped and kind of left, and it was Lucy and a bunch of people, and these guys still dressed up in their corroboree wear, so we went back to Lucy's loft and, had some food and had a nice little salon with folk and talking to these guys, and it was great. And anyway, so the guy knew me soup to nuts. He wasn't part of the Wallamajiri, but, he was part of Dreamtime, and so he was, like I said, he had all these watches. So he was describing to me that all these watches were the representation of the different time zones he went through, but more of how white man looks at linear time. And it was
He wasn't like selling them or something.
no, he wasn't selling them. No,
Okay.
no, he was. It was like a time machine to him, and it kept him in his. Even though he had to go on these planes and do all this stuff and be in the material world, which he came from out back there. He wasn't a city Aborigines. He was one of the indigenous folk, and they got them. These four guys said sure, and they did it because we were talking and they were telling me about the Hopi and the
They did
Hopi
what?
prophecies.
First you said they had sex on a beach. Now you said four men did something that was
What? Sex on the
made animals
beach?
come alive. Yeah, you said some people had sex on a beach.
No, I didn't say that. What I said was the tribe. There were all these that I said. Basically, we'll go back. It's like a tape record. Back to where I said, where we
What's
spent
that, Jim
months,
Carrey's-
when we
Jim
spent
Carrey's
months,
asshole?
when what?
Sorry.
What?
No, he'll kill me now.
What?
There's $150 million.
What?
I
What-
don't have
what-
patience
what-
for it.
what-
It feels
how
like
is this-
I'm dying
What?
Of loneliness.
What?
Feels like I'm dying of loneliness as I sit.
You are dying of loneliness?
Yeah, it feels like it.
Oh.
No, I don't want to be on camera.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
gonna go upstairs. You can keep talking or whatever.
Why are you feeling
'Cause
like
I
you're
don't
dying?
have a woman to be with, and I'm sitting there, and you're just hogging the spotlight, and I'm an actual actor, and it's like, it's okay. I'm just gonna go upstairs. I'm okay up here.
How do I turn this thing off when I'm
Just
done
keep-
with it?
Keep talking as long as you feel like it. When it's done, just turn it off.
How do I do that?
Just press the top right corner, the X button, it'll end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway,
about that,
the long
everyone.
story about Lucy Pull Apart, it was a beginning of the circle and the end of the circle. Started in New York and ended in New York. And these guys came all the way to New York. Anyway, so when we're in this loft with Lucy Apart at her place and all these people, these guys are talking, and they say to me, so you know about the Hopi? And I said, yeah. And you know about the Hopi prophecy? I go, yeah. And they said, well, the white buffalo is coming soon, and these buildings are coming down. And this is like 1979. And they said that's why they came to do that ceremony. Right? So I will, next time, I have to dig through my photos, because I have photos of them in front of the World Trade Center doing a corroboree. Anyway, they said that they were connected with the Hopi and the Iroquois and all of the other tribes in North and South America and Central America that still, even though they were affected by the European, they were still indigenous folk. And that is the thing that makes the connection of all our relations, that we're all connected. And the thing of this technology, the screen, the God of the glowing screen, this separates all of us. This takes the connection of I and I away. And that is the only way that the Church of the Snake and the Eagle, which are just two wings of the same corporate bird, can take the freedom of love's co-creation, of love's unconditional forgiveness. So that's why I'm taking this on the road, kids. Coming to your house soon. So connect up with me through the, the dudeawake42@gmail.com. And it's still cold, but when, May, here we are, kind of in the middle, right? What is it, the 15th, 16th, middle of April, I am, going to hit the road and let the universe take me, because I have no money, no car, no nothing. I own nothing, have nothing. I'm at service to the universe. I am at service to love's unconditional forgiveness. I am here to serve, and I'm here to be your sensei, to help you learn and use the 5 tools of humility, patience, empathy, forgiveness, and healing. So I love you all, and I love all the communications I get, and we have to help John. I mean, there's no helping John, but, our prayers are the best thing we can do.
Why is there no helping John?
Because, John, you have to help yourself. I mean, you just said you're dying of loneliness. You are the only person who can fix that. Everything that you complain about, these are things that you have to deal with. These are your challenges. You have to take the 5 tools of humility, patience, empathy, forgiveness, and healing. And you have to use them on yourself. You have to forgive yourself. You have to heal yourself. You have to have empathy for yourself. You have to have patience with yourself. I mean, I'm your friend, buddy. I'm always there for you. I've definitely proved that. And the bottom line is I can't fix it for you. The best I can be is your friend and example. That's all I can be. But I can't fix it for you. You have to fix it for yourself. Now, our love and prayers for you can assist you, Can be like the lubricant you need.
They don't have to. I'm okay. I just get lonesome sometimes. That's the only reason why I drank in those some of those videos. It was a last resort to deal with being lonesome. Is
Yeah.
pretty much it.
Yeah, I understand.
Or sad.
Yeah, it's trying to take a external thing.
And being sad is only I only get sadness personally from not having enough money to where I don't have to always work towards something. Like if I had millions of dollars, I would stay right here. I wouldn't go anywhere else. I'd probably film some really high quality videos. We could do a whole movie, a real movie.
Hey,
You
John.
can narrate the whole thing.
Can you come over here and
You
give
can
me a hand?
narrate it.
I'm kind of stuck down here.
Okay. Oh no. Oh okay. Yeah.
I'm rusty. I've sat in one place too long. Okay, so we're gonna say goodnight. We're gonna
All right.
hit the button.
You pressed it.
Did I?
Hey, how's it going? Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Hope you enjoyed that one.
Yeah. I'm gonna eat some food.
Yeah.
He made me some food or
Yummy
something.
food up there.
I've actually lost weight.
Yep.
I don't know if you can tell. All right, bye.
Yep.
Everyone's saying bye and stuff.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.